We are live.
All right, we're actually live this time. What's going on, guys? We're here. We got our Chris. Just tell them. I don't have words right now. I'm the funny guy. You're the straight guy. You're here to actually tell them and be straight about things.
I guess that's our dynamic.
Yeah,
we established it. I suppose.
Was that not established already? I feel like that was established already.
I guess I like to think there's a give and take, but like I always tell you, you are good with people. So you are good with people. And
I don't know about that. You set this whole thing up. So, I mean, if I'm the one that's good with people, I mean, just saying.
True. I guess, that's the thing about our show, Dom. It's still so new that we're learning. Like we're learning how to go live on a stream, and we're learning it all. Today, we're going to learn if Solo, a Star Wars story, which we are about to watch along live with a bunch of special guests, is still a good film. Is it a bad film? What kind of film is it? I think that's what I want to learn tonight.
I know I have my own personal thoughts on it that I would like to just point out there so I could just, of course, indulge myself because that's what I'm here to do. I had these thoughts on this movie going in because I feel like I was able to kind of understand what Star Wars, the direction that Star Wars was going, and kind of before the internet finally realized it. And I got to say that so far, that could change, but my thoughts on this movie have not changed in the 2 years since it came out.
This is going to be literally my first time watching it since the theaters when I left and was so disappointed. And it was especially terrible because I was reconnecting with a bunch of old friends. We're like, dude, this is going to be awesome. We're going to go see Solo. This was before Disney had fully let me down with Star Wars when I still had hope.
So where you were kind of like on the rise, right? And you kind of peaked at the Last Jedi, but you didn't realize that it was a peak yet. And you were on the slow descent down. And then Solo was like a little impasse. And you're like, oh, what is this? And then boom, before Rise of Skywalker came out and smacked you right in the face. It's like, yeah, Star Wars sucks now. Before you actually understood, oh, wait, the extended universe. That's actually pretty cool. There's some stuff here that I can actually get out of it.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't think anything could be worse, and so I was like, okay, well, last film wasn't great, so this can't be terrible, right? And like I said, I was hanging out with some old friends, but with that being said, Dom, we have some friends with us today, don't we?
We're not alone today. So all those people that we appeared on their channels, and now they're here to return the favor. Chris. We actually have people. We only started like a few weeks ago. We already have 4 people that actually want to be on our channel. Like, I don't know, man. I consider that a win. I can barely keep like one person around me for that extended amount of time. So,
hey, Mom, I finally got friends. And so with that being said, I hope they didn't hear that. I mean, that'd be very sad. So with that being said, I want to introduce our newest friend, Joe, who runs an account, a YouTube channel, an Instagram account called Guy at the Movies. Joe, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, thanks for having me here. I was paid to be here, so I just want everyone to know that. So thanks for having me.
You're not supposed to tell them that.
I already tweeted it, but happy to be here. Guy at the Movies, daily movie reviews. Solo is a movie that I probably am going to argue with you guys about a little bit, so I'm kind of excited for that. But check out Guy at the Movies after this if you want to. We're doing some cool conversations with some of the people that you will see on here, as well as some other personalities on YouTube and Instagram, as well as on Monday, kind of cool, the director of Night Hunter with Henry Cavill, David Raymond. I'll be interviewing him at 7 p.m. Eastern on my channel or my page. So that should be kind of cool. Check that out. Otherwise, I am being stupid and watching a lot of movies just like these guys are. So Solo tonight, and I'm looking forward to it.
Very cool, man. And we're very happy to have you here.
First of all, who isn't stupid and what's it called? Who isn't watching movies right now? So I resent you for that statement. Seriously, congrats on getting an actual real director with a real movie star to interview on your channel.
We won't give away your location, but you're actually you're not in our neck of the woods, but it's only a shoulder's length away, an elbow's length away in these times, and someone who's not so quite close to us, but I think we're becoming quite close, doing all these live watch-alongs and all that. Our friend from and he's probably going to be like these Americans from the Great White North, Brando Critic. What is going on, man? Thanks for being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me. If Joe was paid to be here, I was blackmailed to be here. So I'm enjoying, I didn't really have any choice. No, but you know what? Star Wars, it's my jam, right? So if you guys don't know who I am, my name is Brandon, aka the Brando Critic. And on my channel, I believe it's my job to point you guys in the direction of movies worth checking out, especially during this time when the theaters are closed. There's 100 years of cinema that is just, just waiting to be discovered. And I'm just wanting to you know, films can be inspirational, films can be entertaining, films can be thought-provoking, and it's my job to point those films in your direction. So I have Brando Critic on YouTube, where all the main content is. Brando Critic on Instagram, which is kind of a offshoot of that. Letterboxd is on the way, so there's going to be many more reviews on that. And I'm here to talk about some Star Wars. It seems like I've been talking about Star Wars like crazy because of all this Rise of Skywalker stuff, and now I'm like, okay, I can take a break from Star Wars, and now here I am again talking more about Star Wars, but it's my expertise, so which would be good. I'm excited. And
yeah, man, I've really been enjoying your you're going through every episode of the Clone Wars, so I'm excited to see how you progress through that. You know.
Yes, I just filmed an episode earlier this morning. You know, it's so funny being a giant Star Wars fan. I never went into watching the Clone Wars, and everyone's talking about season 7 and everything. And I said, all right, you know what? I think it's time to finally sit down and watch them. But you know what? It'd be kind of fun to, you know, bring the reactions to you guys. And you know, every single time I have a question, it seems like there's a Star Wars encyclopedia happening in the comments, which is great. So
wow,
right there with me,
that sounded all familiar, like something that we talked about on our Clone Wars episode. And Brandon, it's actually funny because the whole thing is I never know whether to call you Brandon or Brando, because obviously I know Brandon's your real name.
Can we put that
Brando,
to real quick before we get
come
to my
on, yeah, let's figure this out. Let's figure this out real quick. Like, is it Brando or Brandon? Which is it going to be?
It's Brandon. Brando's just the nickname. You can call me Brando Calrissian. You know,
all right.
In terms of Star Wars.
We're doing that tonight.
Oh,
we are doing that tonight. I like that a lot.
Man. We're looking
at so guys, with that being said, for the sake of jumping into the movie, it's dude, Brando Calrissian. That's what we're going by tonight. I love that.
Also, have to go Star Wars names now. If that's the case, I call Obi-Wan Rizzy. I don't care if it doesn't work. It just sounds cool because Obi-Wan's the best Jedi. Moving on. Who's next?
Yeah, I wanted to say what up to Bearded Film Reviews, and Roberts makes the cut in the chat. Thank you guys for being here so much. And someone else who I am very, very happy to have here, someone who, dude, Elliot, we could never be more thankful enough for you being on our show, man, and just, you know, showing us all the love and support. So why don't you tell people who you are and what it is you do here on YouTube, my friend?
Yeah, no worries. I just to continue that, you know, the black male conversation. Just off the phone with the Magic Mouse himself, Mickey Mouse, and yes, I am Disney's shill, so I was paid to be here as well.
We knew you were getting that. We knew that stimulus.
What's happening?
That's a regular stimulus check,
month, man. I mean, Disney for life. But no, I'm excited to be here, guys. I love the relationship we've built this far, from our very first, you know, Contagion review to watch alongs to where we are at today. So I'm glad to be a part of the community you guys are building. So yeah, Movie Files. I have a YouTube channel that I review. You know, when movies were at the theaters, I like to review the new blockbusters, but also small independent films, horror films, all the genre films you can think of. But now that we don't have movies, I'm going deep into the archives and Netflix and Hulu and all the different streaming services. So I review movies, TV shows. I do my own watch alongs on the channel. I have my own Instagram that talks about movie news and all the fun stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to be here to talk Star Wars, wherever. Dude,
so, yeah. We couldn't be happier to have you, man. And
dude,
so
how has it only been 3 weeks since we did Contagion? How has it already been 3 weeks?
And the world, unfortunately, is no better. But you know what? Tonight it feels a little good because I'm very excited to be doing this, guys.
That's not what we're here to talk about.
No. We're here to have fun. We are here to have fun. And so this next dude has had us on our show a few times, Dom. I know you missed the 4-hour epic stream last night, but anytime David of Flicks Talk is around, it is a good time, David. Thank you so much for being here, man. We appreciate it.
Hey, of course, man. Appreciate you guys all having me. I've seen you guys all before. I think it's the first time I'm meeting guys. So what's up, man? I think we're going to be working together in the future. So just a quick little tidbit coming up. But anyways, guys, yeah, Flicks Talk here, David. And I love to just talk movies as much as I can, getting into a little more of the Netflix TV series. I do love the watch-alongs. Thank you, Elliot, for introducing me to that world. And, of course, Talkin TV podcast. I mean, we're trying to implement you guys as much as possible. I love your guys' energy. And you know what? I'm probably the only one that is not a big Star Wars nerd like you guys on the panel, but that's okay. I'm sure you guys are going to sway my mind a little bit. It's not that I don't like them. I just haven't seen the movies. So starting off with Solo, I'm actually really excited.
Yeah, David, whether you know it or not, man, the force is strong with you, my friend. And I think that we will all go to find that out. Now,
that's
I
actually an
feel it
interesting
in this
thought
box right here.
process. That's actually an interesting thought process that you bring up, David. Because, like, first off, I don't think I've ever heard anyone that like actually like hasn't watched any of the movie before this. So that's going to be an interesting thought process to have, just watching Solo first and foremost.
For sure.
Before
Well done.
we actually get into the discussion, though, Chris, we have to talk about our channel first, of course, which is of course the Talkin TV channel. If you guys would be so kind, please leave a like and a subscribe if you're at all interested in seeing more content from us. Now, Chris, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say that, you were saying about David being so new to Star Wars. This is Brian's first time watching the movie tonight. So, Brian, thank you for being here. And let us know what you think after the film. Also, Spider-Man is awesome. Hello, man. We've been seeing you a lot lately. We appreciate you being here yet again. Guys, this is going to be a good time. And to answer Elmo real quick, Elmo, the Lord our Savior, we have not started the movie yet. But if everyone...
YouTube names these guys come up with. It's
great. I love that name. Elmo, it is great to have you here. With that being said, everyone, I am going to start my timer. So if you're at home right now, hanging out with us, getting ready to watch this, I'm starting my timer in about 30 seconds. We'll be kicking it off, everyone. The Force is with me, and I am one with the Force, as they say. I think I just
know when to hit play, dude.
The best Star Wars
one
movie
with the
out
Force
there.
and the Force was with me.
We are going to hit play,
kidding.
folks, here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do it, everyone.
Sorry, I had to do it. Okay.
Lucasfilm
The
logo.
Lucasfilm logos. All
Born
good
and
Star
raised
Wars
on that.
movies start with the Lucasfilm logo.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Ooh, props for the
It's
accent.
a lawless time.
That's Brando Calrissian, man. You know he came correct.
Yeah, good point. It
Time
is
to
a lawless
compete for
time.
resources, food, medicine, and hyperfuel.
He told me he was practicing this.
Now,
before
see, this
tonight.
is actually an interesting thing that I wanted to bring up. So the whole thing, everyone gave Rogue One crap because that movie didn't have an opening crawl, but everyone hated the actual logos because of what's it called? Just it looked like it was made in an iMovie. But this is like an interesting alternative so far to the actual traditional Star Wars font, kind of because this was kind of before they really had time to establish what the Star Wars spin-offs were. And unfortunately, this also ended up being the one where they ended up getting cut off before they were able to continue with more spin-offs, obviously with what happened with this movie.
Jonesy, man, we're happy to have you here, dude. Thanks for hanging out with us.
So I gotta say right now that this is an ugly looking movie with the color scheme and the cinematography. Like I seem to be, whenever I watched it, if I watched it in the theater, if I watched it at home, if I'm watching it on my computer, it seems to me like the brightness on the screen is on an all-time low. And I just gotta say that this is an ugly looking movie.
Doesn't it work though for Solo?
I don't
it
think
kind of does. And it's actually funny that you bring that. And I actually find it really funny that you bring that up because the whole thing is that this movie's shot by Bradford Young, who's the cinematographer behind Arrival and most recently Ava DuVernay's When They See Us miniseries on Netflix. And I found that his cinematography and lighting styles is very, very similar across all of these movies. And I have to say, when everyone was talking about this movie, in terms of, there's certain points where you can't really tell and see what's going on, but in terms of like portraying like kind of like the gritty underbelly of the Star Wars verse, obviously it's not like a Scorsese gangster piece, but like for me at least, it works for what this movie's going for.
Yeah, this movie has, I think the marketing killed it more so than it being a bad film, but I still do not think by any means it's a great film, but I do think the aesthetic, especially in this opening sequence, it feels like Star Wars. It feels like the gritty underbelly, just like you said, Dom.
Yeah. It's interesting because the whole thing, right, about this movie is that the original intention was for it to be the next Star Wars event film, because the whole idea that Disney, and again, I give them credit for this, is they wanted to continue the idea of Star Wars films being events. They were going to release it at Christmas, but the whole kind of making out with Amelia Clark before we actually found out that she couldn't act. Real quick,
so going off.
This is a question that Screen Junkies I know has brought up a couple of different times, and I both agree and disagree with it. Can Amelia Clark actually act?
Yeah, she can act.
Yeah.
Dude,
what's up?
you guys have not seen.
Thanks for joining, buddy.
You guys haven't seen Last
Evan.
Christmas?
He's a
You guys haven't
clown.
seen Last Christmas?
No.
I have. Yeah.
Yep.
I saw it.
Amazing. Oscar award winning.
I was going to until I guessed the twist of that movie before I actually saw the movie itself.
No
I have a
spoilers
really
here, no
bad
spoilers
habit.
here.
Oh no, I'm not saying anything, but I have a really bad habit of that. I did that with I also did that with that show Hunters on Amazon with Al Pacino. I guessed the twist of that show before it even happened.
Didn't even know there was a twist.
Exactly. I just saved you. Wow, a lot of making out here.
Fans in here? Any Khaleesi fans? Mother of the Dragon fans?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Yeah, but not her performance in this film, that's for sure.
Gotcha.
Ooh. When did the Oh, I've seen those lizards before. Those things were in Star Trek, right? Yeah, those things were definitely Star Trek lizards, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember what the species names are because there's way too many species in this thing for me to remember, but...
Thanks, Robert, for the timestamp, man. It's a lot to micromanage. I appreciate you.
Yeah. You got a lot of moving parts here.
So one of the things I felt about this film was like Brandon said, it's not the best looking movie. And I think the color grade is pretty ugly here.
Yeah.
I mean, this looks like Ozark, which if you guys know, really annoys me.
A lot of dark blues, yeah.
I give it more credit. All right, so real quick trivia question: which NCIS actress voices this lizard thing, Lady Proxima? Any guessers? Anyone?
I don't watch the show, so
I don't watch NCIS.
I have no idea.
The correct answer is Linda Hunt, who is Hetty Lang from NCIS Los Angeles and also got an Oscar win for The Year of Living Dangerously.
There you go, David.
Gotcha. We don't have cable up here in Canada, so
Living high on this Corona.
Hey,
Yeah, what is everyone sipping on right now? I got some water because I'm just
water out, guys.
trying to stay
I'm not
hydrated.
drinking anything. I just had some delicious coconut shrimp that my mom made. It was really, really good.
There's some Luke Skywalker blue milk here for me.
Hey, there you go, Elliot. I love it. I love it.
Blue milk to match the blue look of this screen.
Evan said he was actually pleasantly surprised with Solo. He liked it way more than he thought he would.
I still stand by my statement. I like this movie more than The Last Jedi. It's a more consistent movie at the very least. But
I disagree with that statement, but I do agree that I like Solo more than I thought I would.
Yeah,
You guys agree with what Brian's saying? He hated Rogue One, so he didn't see Solo in theaters. I feel like for these stories, these individual films, especially since there's like a new director each time, you should give them all an individual chance. You know,
agree.
especially if you love Star Wars. You know,
Yeah, because the whole thing, right, is it all contributes to the idea of Star Wars, which is that every film is going to give you a different look and feel. It's because that's the whole thing that everybody complained about with the prequels is the fact that is the fact that everything is so connected to the Skywalkers, it kind of takes away from the expansiveness and the ultimate like kind of interesting factors of this universe. And I will say that this movie gave me that, you know.
But
this movie,
I don't know that Ron Howard was the one to go with for a
well,
Star
that's
Wars
where I'll
movie
agree
like
with
this.
you. That's where I'll agree with you.
Even the casting here is just kind of off for me. I mean, we already talked about Amelia, but even the main guy, Anton, I'm just not.
Well, the one thing that
funny. I think he's great.
Really?
I don't like this movie. I think.
Oh, you mean Alden, not Anton?
Alden,
but,
yeah. Who am I thinking of?
It's funny that you mentioned that because the whole thing about that is that obviously this wasn't originally supposed to be Ron Howard directing. It was supposed to be Phil Lord and Chris Miller. And the whole thing with that is, and again, this is all very rumored with behind the scenes, but the fact that part of the reason why they were fired is because like the takes that they were submitting, they were taking really long with production because obviously, you know, they're comedy directors, they're improvising constantly. So they were going to give us a different type of a Star Wars movie than we've ever seen before. But also like just the takes that they were submitting, just Kennedy or whoever was in charge was just not a fan of. So when they left or they were fired or whatever, like I said, it's not actually confirmed. So I don't want to make any definitive statements on it. When they brought in Ron Howard, the idea being, and ultimately, which is what contributed to why this movie was never going to be a success, is because they ultimately, in my opinion, reshot the whole movie.
And went
apparently
safe.
and apparently Alden needed like acting lessons and stuff like that. So it's like the fact that this movie turned out to be like semi-compelling to me is a miracle because this very easily could have been another Justice League situation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm waiting for that Star Wars that book to come out between, you know, this being recast or the directors and everything with all the stuff moving forward. I'm waiting for that tell-all book to come out one day.
Yeah, no, actually, that's going to be it's going to be called Kennedy's Reign as Lucasfilm CEO. That's going to be a great book.
Do you think her days are numbered?
Yes.
I don't.
110%.
Same here.
Well, because the whole thing is she still made the money.
She's still making money, and that's what
I got. Like, with the exception of this movie, this was the only one. Every single other movie that was released under her reign was a gigantic success. So
but it's called Star Wars, though. You know, if these were original movies and they made that much money, then she's sticking around.
True, but that's a semantics argument that has been had like millions upon millions of times. You know, like you can say that about any movie. You know,
here's the thing.
What's the argument about the Transformers movies?
You know, Kathleen Kennedy, in my opinion, should be out of there. She clearly doesn't listen to the fans. All they see is a dollar sign. But there's a way to do what they're doing, you know, like Marvel, for example. This is what I'm trying to say. Like Marvel is giving the fans content that they love, movies that, like, you know, people were crying when I walked out of Endgame, and they're still making equal amount of dollar signs, if not more, than the Star Wars franchise. But Star Wars is just butchering and chopping up and destroying everything that we have grown to love. You know, I mean, there's a way to do it and still make a lot of money. I think Kathleen Kennedy is not the answer in regards to that situation.
I think the thing that you look at is, especially if you look at kind of how the idea of Marvel could succeed is look at the Mandalorian roundtable and look at how Jon Favreau is treating it. It's funny because I actually watched a video of this the other day. It was a $3 theater video where they were covering Sam Witwer's most recent tweet about Rian Johnson not doing his homework when it comes to The Last Jedi. And obviously, again, that was kind of like him pointing a middle finger at kind of him as, you know, his own subtle, sneaky way of kind of pointing a middle finger at Rian Johnson, which I found kind of funny, especially coming from Witwer. But the whole thing, and I actually found a lot of merit to this, is the idea that what Kennedy's whole thing is, Kennedy is only really working with people who know how to do blockbuster films. And the problem is when it comes to making blockbuster films, you know, they're used to like certain expectations of like making movies a certain way. And that ultimately, to me at least, is going to detract from some of the specific things from the extended canon that could actually introduce some new ideas and make these new Star Wars movies interesting, which could be part of the reason why certain of these movies ended up coming off as just inconsistent or just to seem to be repeating things from the past. But if you look at what Jon Favreau has done with all the directors that he brought on for The Mandalorian, you know, he seems to understand like kind of the newer and younger filmmakers. It just seems to be collaborating with them and understanding them artistically in a way that Kennedy either just doesn't, because of where she's been and because of what her experience is, or just like didn't feel like doing.
I don't think Kennedy is grounded enough. So back to the statement that was made earlier about Kennedy not listening to the fans, I think it's quite the opposite. I think they listen to the fans a little too much, in the sense that they blew away the story of the final trilogy and just chopped it all up because they were just flipping on the fly. And that's why we got 3 very different movies. Yeah, but that's not who you want in charge of something like this. Someone that's going to panic.
I agree. And it's funny because to further that, I heard that when they were planning Force Awakens, Kennedy and JJ had like a board with like all the index cards that you see in like every good writer's room or like every TV show where they had all 3 movies plotted out. But apparently after Force Awakens, they just threw that out completely, which completely boggles me. I have no idea why that happened. I'm assuming it's because JJ walked and because JJ was only going to do the first movie, and maybe she just didn't feel confident without him around. You know, she probably found him as her partner. You know, so I don't know. That part's confusing to me. But so that's the actual movie itself. So this
hold on. Let's go around the room here because Mike raises a good point, and Dom, let's let our guest go first. Then you and I will obviously chime in. But so. He's saying she is a great producer. Do you think that, you know, they need like a creative head for Star Wars like Marvel has? Like, do you guys think that's the missing link here? Let's turn it to Joe first, and we'll just go around the room through David and Elliot, and it'll come back to us. All right, Dom?
Yeah. I do think she needs some people around her a little bit better. I think she would have been the whole property would have been in good hands with J.J. Abrams sticking around. But I think that once he bailed, she didn't really know what to do with the story that was already created and the knowledge that he brought to the table. Not saying he's a great director, not saying he was the right person, but he was the guy that was there driving it. You see that with The Rise of Skywalker. Everything that was shelved got thrown into The Rise of Skywalker. So,
yeah. David, man, I know this isn't quite your realm, but I mean, you obviously know Star Wars is suffering, dude. What do you think could save it in this situation?
Be nice to get an outside opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
I am the outside opinion guy, the last square, as you may. But I have no clue what the hell you guys are talking about. You know, these people. But do I believe someone should be placed as a creative head? I'm guessing the woman that you're talking about is kind of like the head of everything, pretty much. Do I believe in sections or certain departments? Hell yeah, of course, yeah. There's some people that deserve certain, they excel in certain expertise, I guess. So having a person that just focuses on that creative, especially, I heard you guys talking about, do they listen to the fans too much or not enough? You have to find someone that's their main focus, is to to hear what the fans are saying and make sure that this does not become a flop, because whether they're trying to gain new fans, I think that was the whole technique. I'm just trying to gauge it, just guessing. Maybe they were trying to gain new fans, but it was the complete opposite effect of what they got. They just ruined it for all the old fans. So in that sense, yes, definitely a creative head for that department.
Yeah, Elliot, what's your take on all this, man?
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys have brought up a lot of great points. I'm looking at her, her resume is, without speaking about, I mean, she, obviously was a part of Indiana Jones and E.T. and a lot of our favorite films. And she, as you guys mentioned, she works with a lot of blockbuster directors, such as one of the, greatest, in my opinion, Steven Spielberg. So she has a resume that speaks for herself. And I think she's a great executive in the sense of she knows how to put together a team and puts together, big blockbuster events and brings in the cash. But in regards to, what Mike is bringing up here, I think, and to his point, you know, being in a position where she's still maybe head of Star Wars, because, you know, I don't know how you guys feel about The Mandalorian, but, you know, I know people are hating the films, but some people love The Mandalorian and all the other decisions that she's making, whether it be video games or comic books. She controls all of that stuff. So even within the bad films, there are some things that kind of, I don't know, balance itself out. But I know a lot of people would love the idea of either Jon Favreau having more of an executive role, or maybe her role, or even the great Dave Filoni, who is literally the apprentice of George Lucas. So I know a lot of people would love to see him in that role, but I don't think that they're probably don't want to put that time and commitment and just focus on the day-to-day work, which I think Kathleen can be great at that role. And then maybe having them to manning the movies, TV shows, the video games stuff moving forward. But in regards to, you know, her as a creative head, I think that would be a good balance, and maybe bring those two in more and just kind of control the narrative on the TV and the movie front.
Also, we just surpassed one of the dumbest moments, at least I think, in the film, where Han Solo got his name.
Oh yeah.
I didn't even want to talk about it.
I'll be the first person to even admit that. Reeks of like this
PG-13, but I could rant about how
studio involvement, really corny. Oh, you're all alone, solo.
Thank Christ that they called him Han Solo instead of Han Loner or Han nobody else.
Right?
I kind of like it.
Oh God, thank God it was Han Loner.
I'm not a fan of those. I'm not a fan of any more of like honest trailers or CinemaSins or any of those like nitpicky YouTube channels that like kind of just like nitpick every single trope and movie. But this is one thing that I do think has some legitimacy and credence to it, which is that like, oh, just how the prequels need to explain where every cool thing came from without like actually, it's like, oh, where Han Solo got his blaster, or like how Han met Chewie, you know, like certain things I do think merit an origin story. That is not how Han Solo got his name, is not one of them. Or at least if you're gonna do it, do it in a cooler way than that.
I couldn't care any less than I did in that moment when I first saw it, and again right now watching it.
It was perfect.
And now we have the introduction of Woody Harrelson, Thandie Newton, and soon to be revealed the Jon Favreau alien. I don't actually remember their names.
I know Rio is the name of the
Rio with his arms.
Rio Durant. Okay, I remember Woody Harrelson's name is Beckett. I know that. Tobias
Joe,
Beckett.
Do you like the fact that his name Solo came from some Imperial officer?
I mean, it's going to come from something stupid. We know that, right? Like they're not going to go back and talk about how George Lucas was like, what should we do here? Whatever. I'm like, let's move on.
At least in the theater, that's when I shook my head. I'm like, oh God, now we're in trouble. But you know what? Why not go all in? Let's show where we got his boots. Let's see where he got his haircut. Let's see where he got his.
I think if I knew his, you're right, Brandon. I think if I knew his barber, then I probably would have been more attached to the character and really understood where he was coming from a little more.
Kathleen Kennedy, gotta respect the barbers out there. Essential service. Got to make sure that they're, making sure everyone's hair is nice and trim in a galaxy far, far away. That's the only thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because the whole thing about origin stories and why I think they're so hit or miss is because to me, an origin story, the point of an origin story is you take like just certain prequels is you take the idea of a character, right? And you want to emphasize kind of the steps that got them to where they are, where we recognizing them while also having it be a good story. And that's why I never want to discount any prequel or any like the idea that, all prequels are terrible at origin because you know where they're going to end. I disagree because what about X-Men First Class? X-Men First Class to me, in a way, trumps all three of the original X-Men films, but that's just my personal take on it, just because of how fascinating and interesting it digs into those characters before. Like, to me, there is a way to portray an interesting Han Solo character,
Disclaimer, he does not speak for everyone on the stream.
Good to know. But if I can just finish my point, my whole thing is that if anything, I would just say this movie's biggest problem is that it's too light. And the whole thing is that like if you want to emphasize like the character of Han Solo, you got to make it like with a little bit of tragedy. And if I'm just going right off the bat, I don't think this movie has enough of that.
Yeah. So Joe, it seems like I feel like you might be a Solo defender, or at least it seems like you're in the camp of liking this film, huh?
I like it better than I thought I would. It's not like my favorite film. I wouldn't have sat down to watch it again if we weren't doing this tonight, to be honest. Sure. But I don't hate it. I think that what we had talked about earlier, it really kind of came out of what could have been a real, troubled release. And actually, I think it was a fine movie. It didn't do well, obviously. And we're not getting Solo 2 or whatever, Solo Squared, whatever they're called. But I don't know. I'm into it. it's a fine movie. I think that just overall with Star Wars, I'm ready for something new.
Yes.
I'm so tired of like, I was arguing this earlier with people. I'm so tired of like going back to like, oh, he's the brother of a guy who dated a girl who knew Luke Skywalker. Like, we gotta like get away from these old stories and branch off into something different.
Yeah, I feel you, man. I just want to say a quick shout out and a quick thank you to Evan for the sub, man. We appreciate that. We do this out of the love, but like little things like that really mean a lot to us. And you know, my whole take on this film is that I think the marketing really is a big part in as to why this film did as poorly as it did. I mean, sure, I guess it did fine, but if you look at it in a Star Wars franchise, like this is just like a stain, you know, on why we all, half of us are wearing t-shirts right now. We love this thing, you know, and this is like history in the worst way for this franchise. And you have such like talent in the cast. To be honest, I'm not too familiar with the lead. I haven't seen him in much outside of this film, but like, I felt like there was so much to work with and it just under-delivered. But also I think the way that they were marketing it, it was almost like, yeah, I guess go see this film if you want. So like that thought was already in my head before I went to the theaters, you know, and that's a big part of it.
It's the Incredible Hulk of the Star Wars saga, and that it's the movie that the studio was already willing to write off before it even came out. It's like, oh, just see this movie or not. We don't really care because it's not going to matter in any way. But in a way, it's funny that you mentioned that because the whole thing is that I'm looking at this movie again as a theatrical, like big budget, epic Star Wars movie. Obviously, yes, it's not going to work. But like as just like a fun little space adventure. I mean, yeah, it's well shot. It's compelling enough. Sure, it's light and fluffy. But like I look at this, and especially now considering like the things in this movie that would ultimately end up factoring into the animated shows, which in some ways ended up being more awesome and epic than some of the movies that we ended up getting. I'm like, yeah, this is actually not that bad.
Going back to Chris's part in regards to the failure of this film, I think the biggest, I mean, there's many different factors, but my number one reason why this film didn't do good at the box office was Disney itself. I don't know if you guys remember 3 weeks or 2 weeks before this film came out, Infinity War was out.
Exactly.
So Disney's kind of eating itself in regards to putting out one of the biggest films of 2018 and one of the biggest films of all time. They should have put this movie out in December, which they were doing for the last 2 years prior to that. But I honestly, I think the biggest thing was Infinity War literally was just in the theater. And I know Star Wars, I'm a big Star Wars fan, but the generation we're living in, the MCU is their Star Wars. So it's
yeah, I was not thanks for the crowd right there. Okay, I will say, I'll shout this out just from a filmmaking standpoint. Forget Star Wars, from a filmmaking standpoint, this is a great way to introduce Chewbacca right here. Like grizzled, slimy. He's clearly been in slavery for years. Like he's been treated like this animal, like the wrecked stormtrooper armor. Without knowing, if you had never seen Chewbacca before in any movie, this is a great introduction. Right
this is awesome. This reminds me of when Thor went up against Hulk on Ragnarok.
Absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
So could not totally reminiscent of that.
I do also feel like they just gave him like superhuman powers here, though. Like,
Chewbacca's always been that strong, though. He's
it's
always
just funny
been that
seeing
strong.
it, I guess, in high def.
Yeah.
So David, just so you know, the whole thing about Wookiees, which is what Chewbacca is, they're a common race that gets enslaved and sort of like put in fighting pits and all that type of stuff throughout the galaxy. And so when you save a Wookiee, they give you their life. It's a life debt. And so that's kind of like, this is the moment we're getting to see for all those years, Han and Chewie together, you know, this is how they came to be. So I do think they actually paid nice homage to this moment, you know. Sorry, what were you saying there, Dave?
I was just saying in that sense, it's a good introduction so far of what I'm seeing. As far going back to what you guys said about the dark film, the color palette is so low on everything. I'm waiting for it to brighten up, and it's like, no, we're still getting that gray hazy.
Yeah. So like, Brandon, you were kind of making that point earlier, weren't you?
Yeah, I think this film is extremely ugly, and I do have to say that Chewbacca in this film kind of reminds me of my ex-wife.
Oh my God! Wow.
I
literally don't know how to take that.
No.
Would you? Do you want to elaborate? Oh, okay, gotcha.
Oh, I can give you the whole story, but we are doing a watch along.
Bring up there.
This is a PG-13 movie,
and I hope she watches this. I hope she watches.
We got to make this PG-13 chat to know. But actually, it's funny because what's funny is that with how great that introduction is, I do want to bring up one point that. Again, I feel like not enough people talked about with kind of all their complaints with this movie, which is Han speaking Wookiees. Because obviously, if you add that to the basic continuity era of like, okay, if Han could speak Wookiee that entire time, why does he never speak it for the rest of this movie or the rest of the goddamn series when he's with Chewbacca?
That's a prequel problem, right?
So that, well, not just a prequel problem. That's just a movie problem. Like, that's just an original thing. It's like, why introduce it if it's clearly never a thing? You know, if he
that's what I mean. Like if you go backwards in time and you introduce something that has never been seen before, it's like, it always brings that up. Like, oh, when did they do it before?
what is that? It's like a pre-retcon something, because it's not a retcon, because it's not retconning something that was already established from a previous movie chronologically. It's because this movie does take place chronologically before, obviously, A New Hope. But that was just always something that was I didn't really like. It didn't bother me because it happened so quickly that I'm like, okay, whatever. But it was just, I'm like, why even bother to introduce that?
I mean, I didn't really like it either. But I thought it was just kind of cute that they know how to, like, Han always knew what Chewbacca was talking about, because he doesn't do it again in this movie either.
Right. Yeah, so, exactly. Like, not once. Like, that was the only time you ever hear him actually speak Wookiees.
Exactly.
Like, that's just confusing.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things where there's a lot to balance, and it seems maybe, you know, the Marvel continuity writers could help these guys out a little bit in that
Which
situation.
I actually find that funny, because just in terms of my MCU rewatch so far that I'm actually doing on my own, like, I already know there's a ton of retcons that are coming down the line, but that's a discussion for another video.
Yeah. I have a question for everybody. Someone at my work said this, and I've been kind of thinking about it for the last 6 months. Not every day, obviously. But he said the worst thing to ever happen to Star Wars was Star Wars fans. Because when the prequels came out, you know, people who grew up with the original trilogy, oh, the prequels suck, they're terrible. But then people who kind of grew up with the prequels, that's their version of Star Wars. And now all these sequels are coming out, and people who love the prequels hate it because it ruins Anakin's legacy. People who like the original trilogy, you know, all these things. So you have a bunch of different people through many different generations who think Star Wars is different to them, right? Where he said, you know, Star Wars, when it came out, it was a movie aimed at children, right? The adventures of Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and now everyone's like, well, the reason why Mace Windu has a purple lightsaber is because the Kyber crystal in his lightsaber was found on this planet, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, okay, well, what's more important? Is it the details of Star Wars? Is it the story of Star Wars? But it doesn't really matter now. Every single time you look up Star Wars on Google, you're going to find us a bunch of people just complaining and saying, oh, The Rise of Skywalker is actually a great movie, and all of you guys are crazy. All of you guys are idiots. The Last Jedi was a masterpiece, yada, yada, yada. It's created such a toxic culture because everyone has all these different views of what Star Wars can be. And I wasn't really able to really understand what he was saying, but I think I kind of get it. Like, the worst thing that happened to Star Wars, we're Star Wars fans.
Yeah,
and Twitter, in my opinion.
And Twitter, but yeah, it's tricky. It's a tricky thing to implement, obviously, because yes, you do have to factor in the internet into that whole discussion. Because obviously, yes, the internet wasn't really a thing even when the prequels came out. Obviously, it was still like on the horizon, but it really didn't become a thing until like a few years, until like Revenge of the Sith. But obviously, the internet was not a thing. So when the original Star Wars trilogy came out, it was just movies, and kind of this idea of Star Wars being like kind of this end-all, be-all movie franchise that is almost like this second religion to people at certain points. Kind of the way the Marvel movies are now. It's definitely an argument to investigate and discuss, but I think it's one that there isn't necessarily a definitive answer, because yes, there is a lot of fault to be placed on the fans, but also there is obviously, again, there are legitimate problems that are based on the filmmakers and how these films have been handled in history. And also, honestly, again, we love to give him credit, but with Lucas himself, because a lot of these creative decisions do go back to Lucas and just how much we owe him. But if I can just backtrack real quick to my Han Chewbacca thing. First off, steamy Han Chewbacca love scene in the shower, big missed opportunity right there when they're cleaning themselves up. But
I was
also,
like, what's happening here?
Yeah, right. But also, again, just a kind of just a quick scene that could have fixed that. That scene when Chewbacca comes down the ramp and they're just chilling right there, right before they're about to do the train heist. Han and him could be having a discussion where Han is just trying to speak Wookiees, and then Han's like, you know what? I'll admit this is kind of a little bit taking a toll on my throat. Do you understand me? And Chewie could just nod. Boom. Problem solved for the rest of the franchise. Problem solved. Like, that's not even like a 2-second scene that you have right there. Problem solved. Okay, Han doesn't feel like speaking Wookiees, and Chewie's cool with it. Cool. You know, they kind of, if anything, it furthers their relationship as friends. Boom. I just solved this movie's biggest problem.
Well, I want to say first up, what up, YOLO? Thanks for being here, man. It's good to see you. We'll have to get you on one of these at some point in time. But yeah, I mean, I want to get everyone else's thoughts on this too. But for me, I think, you know, it's a mixture of everything in regards to, like, did the fans ruin Star Wars, right? I think the ability to tweet at a creator and to sort of get in their heads and be like, yo, that movie sucked. Whereas, like, you know, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you read the tabloids, you read, like, you know, the critics writing and all that, but like, you really weren't that accessible if you were like a director, a filmmaker, an actor. So I think there's a lot of that. And for all the good that has done, like, look at Code 8, right? Getting the big Kickstarter, and that film wouldn't have been made if it wasn't for social media and people like really like being like, hey, we're behind this project. Let's see this thing come to life. But for as many positive situations as there is, I think there's like 20, 30, 40 negatives to every one, you know. But Joe, man, and let's get David and Elliot after that. Like, what's your take on all this?
Star Wars fans definitely are really challenging, and I say that as one. I totally agree with absolutely everything that Brandon said. I mean, it is kind of like you made the comment earlier, like Disney eating itself, and that's kind of what Star Wars fans do. They're friendly when they're friendly, and they are like absolute villains to one another when they disagree on any little thing, like, you know, talking Wookiees or whatever. So it could really. It's detrimental. I mean, and nothing that they do from this point forward is going to please any of the older fans. And that's, you know, it's just what it is. I mean, it's the same thing with Marvel, though. Like, Marvel's going to see this down the road. Once Marvel gets into some new territory and, you know, should they ever branch off and bring back Iron Man in some way or like do something like that, they're going to have the same challenges because it's people saying, well, that's not my Star Wars. That's not my Iron Man.
I also think it could potentially speak to a larger problem. This is something that I've touched on mine and Chris's own personal discussion, but it's something I actually did want to bring up to you. The idea of homogenization of media and how kind of the introduction of the internet and kind of allowing everyone to have their own individual voices does contribute to kind of the breaking down of media. Because before, obviously, a big impact on kind of the idea of the creation of fans was the fact that you would just have these one properties that would come in and just blow everything up, you know, whatever the case may be, whether it was exceptionally made or whether it just had something in it that spoke to everyone, you know, whatever. But kind of now with the introduction of social media and new technology, if that's even possible, you know, like Chris has talked ad nauseum about how kind of like the magic of something like a Goodfellas, you know, and how that could come in and just like steal everything, you know. But now it's like there could be something that comes out that's great, but then the next day there'll be 20 different variations of it just because it's just that easy and accessible now with technology. So this idea of kind of this one overwhelming franchise like Star Wars, you know, like Marvel, like Game of Thrones, whether that's ever going to be possible again, I think that's a discussion worth having as well.
Yeah, David, what's your take on all this, man?
Yeah, I mean, this goes to something that we were talking about yesterday too, is that as we get older, I mean, these new movies present to a newer audience. I think they're purposely doing it, Disney in particular, is just catering to this, you know, demographic of every decade, right? So, I mean, you have these new fans, this new crop, this new money, you know, so to speak, like guys, the movie just said, yeah, money's always going to talk, guys. And if the story changes, the story changes. Unfortunately, that's just what they're going to do, whether you like it or not. But going back to the whole social media aspect of it, social media, I think, has ruined movies, whether that means us breaking down trailers, which we haven't done like ever, like in the last like 10 years is when it peaked. How many times have we freeze framed this, freeze framed that, and they've had to edit trailers and stuff like that because the internet loves to nitpick on forums or blogs or whatever it is. That being said, if a movie gets a negative reaction, how big does it go on blogs? That's the first thing, because they know it's headlines. It's a new newspaper now. Blogs are. So they know that many eyes, the directors are definitely going to see that, and they're going to have to do something about it. I mean, you know, it's just, especially when you get properties this big. I don't know the lore 100% of what I'm watching right now. It looks cool to me, but I mean, I know you're going to get those fans. And I think these might be more diehard than Marvel fans, because I do love Marvel movies, but I never see Marvel fans going at it like I see Star Wars fans going at it. But I think
there's just so much of a history with these Star Wars fans, you know?
Yeah. Is this really a Snowpiercer crossover? Because that's just a joke.
Yeah, right. It could be, but also, I could just talk about the fact of, I could say right now that another big problem that I have with this movie, again, just speaking of it from like, not as a Star Wars movie, but just as a movie in general, like strict rules in general, to me at least, there is a big missed opportunity with not seeing more like team ups with Han and this crew just in general, like just Han, Chewie, Beckett, his wife, and the Rio Durant alien before Rio and and Thandie Newton just get axed off after this first heist. Like, I personally think that's a big missed opportunity. Like, if you would like kind of built up that demeanor over these first couple heists, kind of established Han as the smuggler, and then boom, you get that one heist that goes wrong, and then bring in Crimson Dawn. Like, to me, this entire first act is completely rushed.
No, I hear you on that. It definitely has a lot of flaws. But before we move on, Elliot, man, I'm dying to know, dude, how do you feel about the Star Wars fandom and Twitter and all this stuff affecting films and these filmmakers?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have said pretty much everything that I agree with. I think the biggest thing to keep into account in regards to the fandom of Star Wars, again, it goes back to, you know, we're talking about a fandom that started in 1977 and is all the way to 2020. So there's, you know, the people that like, I know Big J mentioned it. He grew up with it. Then you have kids that found out about it in the 90s, and the prequel kids, and then the kids that 20 years from now, this new trilogy it's going to be funny, right? In 15 years, this new trilogy is going to kind of pick up the hype that people liked it, just like the same thing happened with the prequels with the early 2000s. So it's an interesting fandom. To me, a lot of that stuff goes in one ear and out the other. If I like something, I like it, and I watch, I support Star Wars, whether it be on the big screen and I think the future of Star Wars and a lot of these big properties might be TV. Again, I don't know where you guys stand with The Mandalorian, but it seems like for the most part, and Clone Wars and all the, the stuff on the small screen has a lot more positivity to the stuff on the big screen. So I think there's, a tide that can shift. Today they just announced that they're bringing back, the Boba Fett to be back in the sequel and in the second season, and obviously Ahsoka Tano and all that different stuff. So TV, I think, is gonna start to get the fandom back on the mix. I know people. I haven't played the video games, the Fallen Jedi and all the stuff that people love, and Battlefront and all that. So there's momentum and positivity that can happen there. But again, when you take into account the lore and just the years, the decades, generations of people that grew up with this, that it's always going to be a roller coaster with this type of stuff. But I think this franchise is a lot of positivity coming pretty soon.
I agree with that, man. With the games, all you're really missing out on is world building. There's very compelling stories, especially with the most recent game. It's canon, which is cool, but it's just a little slice of this bigger Star Wars pie. Before we jump on, I do want to kind of know where everyone ranks this film out of all of the Star Wars films. And David, we'll get your first impressions when it comes around to you. But just for everyone listening at home, we're about 36, 37 minutes. We're at the big train scene. So if you're wondering where we're at, that's where we are. And this scene always feels very reminiscent of I think it's Winter Soldier to me, Captain America, kind of like the Disney one trick pony effect a little bit here, but it still has its own charm. But where does this film rank for you guys? Dom, where is this on your list of Star Wars films, man?
If I'm remembering this correctly, I still like the 3 original movies, Rogue One, Force Awakens, and I also had Revenge of the Sith ranked above this movie. So if you take those, that's what, 6 and 6. So yeah, this would rank 7 for me overall in terms of Star Wars movie. I still like it more than the Clone Wars animated movie, but that's kind of like a whole different argument in of itself.
Yeah, this is I'll just make it quick before we go to Joe. This is the bottom of the barrel for me. This is the absolute lowest you can go in the Star Wars universe. So I think it's only right that we hand it over to Joe. Man, Joe, where's this movie rank for you?
This is actually in the middle for me as well.
Okay.
It's I had the first Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back as the first 2 for me. And then I actually go Last Jedi after that, which I know is contentious and whatever. And I actually have Rise of Skywalker right after that. I hated the prequels. I hated them when I saw them, and I still to this day, when I did a rewatch of them before Rise of Skywalker came out, did not enjoy them, except for Revenge of the Sith is a solid, I think, lead up and does some good stuff. But Rogue One, it grew on me. The first time I saw it, you asked that earlier, I didn't really care for it, but it grew on me. And that's the type of thing I want to see more from Star Wars now, actually.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So, David, man, what is your first impression so far of this film as you're like our new timer here?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I did watch OG movies, 4, 5, and 6, and back in the 70s, 80s. Well, not when they came out. Obviously, I'm not that old, but back in the 90s when I was growing up, I did check out those movies. My dad was actually a huge fan. I got to ask him what he thinks about some of these movies, because I think he might have seen a couple of these newer movies. But as far as the Solo movie goes, so far I am liking it. I like what I'm seeing visually. Once again, we're getting a really grim palette going on, but I mean, I'm looking at the atmosphere around what's going on. It's very snowy. It's very just not overcast, but I guess cloudy, and there's not much light coming through. So I think they're really trying to convey something with all that grayness going on. I love this scene though. Yeah, once again, Captain America, man. I'm definitely getting those vibes of Winter Soldier.
Yeah, Elliot, dude. You seem like a ranking guy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, no, I have my letterbox. I was just seeing when the last time I updated. So, I mean, just a quick rundown. I have, from number 1, New Hope is my favorite Star Wars film. And then number 2 is Empire Strikes Back. I got Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rogue One, Return of the Jedi, Star Wars, Rise of Skywalker, this film. And then I have episode 3, 1, and then 2 is my least favorite Star Wars film. And then I guess, too, the Clone Wars movie. I'm not a big fan of that, the animated movie.
Okay, I wasn't personally counting that in my list, but I also haven't seen it yet. I've heard good things though, so that's it's a little concerning to hear. But Brando, man, Brando Calrissian, where's this film rank for you?
Well, the Clone Wars movie, I don't even count as a movie because everyone talks about how before that movie even came out, there were supposed to be 4 individual episodes. They put it all together in a movie. To me, I don't even count that as a movie. So I don't even count that. But from worst to best, Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace will always have a cherished place in my heart because it was like the first time like I really recognized what Star Wars was. I had the Legos and it's all nostalgia based and but in terms of my critic brain, it's a bad movie. And then I have Rogue One, and then I have Solo, and then I have Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, Revenge of the Sith, Force Awakens, Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope. And Empire Strikes Back and A New Hope, it's like if you ask me on a different day, I just love how just the movie magic of the first movie. So I have Solo pretty low, but I do like it more than Rogue One. But that's not saying much. I was not a big fan of Rogue One.
Maybe I am a hipster then. I was denying it last night, but maybe I am a hipster because Rogue One is top 3 Star Wars films.
Yeah, it's my top 5. I mean, my top 5.
Yeah, it's my number 3.
Yeah. Hell yeah, Dom. That's why we do this show together, man.
Yeah, dude, are you kidding me? It goes all the way back to our first episode. Me, I'm not the person to answer that. Only you can answer that. Oh,
well, no. You know people, and you know me almost better than I know myself. And last night, these guys.
I don't like to make those statements about certain people. All right, very well deserved punch.
God.
If we're checking back in with the movie real quick, Beckett, they unfortunately just lost Rio, and I just remember Danny Newton's character. It's Val, right? That's her name. Oh man, I guess that just shows like really just how important her character was. That I literally just remembered her name after they killed her. But yeah. So yeah, like at this point in the movie, I guess my question for you guys is. Like what are your thoughts? Like we just kind of like again, it's another example of to me like a problem. I saw this last night with the first Thor movie, and also it's very similar to Thor Ragnarok, where the first act of the movie feels like 3 different movies crammed into one. And they just seem to be jumping from event to event to event. Like, what is your guys' whole take on that so far?
Yeah, for me, I remember checking my phone thinking I really can't wait to go to Chili's and actually talk with my friends. And, thank God it's been a while since we've seen each other because, yeah, that Chewbacca scene was cool, but like not a very exciting train fight. In my opinion, but that's just me, the hipster of the bunch. So Joe, man, how are you feeling at this point in the film?
I'm the opposite. I think that at this point, I went into the whole movie with low expectations and really no expectations, I guess. So, is it one of the best ones? No. But it was fun. It was a good time at the movies, and that's all I'm looking for. I could have done without diving more into Han Solo. This also is like just another stop on Woody Harrelson's like rise to the top of coming back from the dead. So I don't know.
Yeah,
was Woody ever dead to begin with though?
He was quiet for a while. He was quiet for a bit.
Yeah, I would say first season of True Detective really kind of brought him back in the forefront, at least from a pulp culture standpoint, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Okay, I'm not familiar with what was his whole situation here.
What, True Detective?
No, Woody. What was his whole deal?
No, I think he was just. I think what Joe was saying is just like he just wasn't in the front of the landscape in regards to Hollywood movies and being as popular as it was in the
time for him getting work.
The Hunger Games.
Yeah, he had a low point, I guess.
Oh yeah, the Hunger Games.
He was in all the Hunger Games movies.
But I even mean before Hunger Games was when he was kind of quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, David. I mean, I feel like we kind of just asked you, but where are you at right now in the movie? Just going around the circle here to get back to Dom's question.
Yeah, I want to ask you guys, why do you hate this movie so much? I'm really confused. I don't hate it, but is it more the lore, or is it because visually this looks pretty clean?
It has nothing to do with the lore. It has nothing to do with the visuals. It's just the heart of the film isn't there for me like it is with so many of the other Star Wars films. These films that I just can watch when I'm sick, when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm angry. You know what I mean? This just doesn't have that for me. No, it's all good, dude. I got a too. She's being good right now, thankfully.
Do you guys do at 7 p.m. like everyone like hits like pans and things, and everyone starts to shout and they honk their horns and things for all the healthcare workers?
No, you guys do that?
Is that a Canadian only thing?
Americans suck, man.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. At 7 p.m., everyone stops what they're doing. Everyone honks in their horns. They all clap and they all cheer and everything. And it's all like a giant thank you for all the healthcare workers. And we've trained my dog at 7 p.m. to howl.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's a big thank you to all the healthcare workers. We like to each other.
Yeah,
That's
if you're out
awesome,
there
man.
joining us right now, we appreciate it. That goes without saying. Thank
definitely.
you. So Elliot, where were you at this point in the movie?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I approach Star Wars in a different mindset. Not saying that you guys go in with a particular mindset, but I go in just looking for a space adventure. To be honest with you, my first time being exposed to Star Wars was when I was a little kid. My first time seeing a Star Wars film was Force Awakens, back in whatever that was, 2015. So I go in these films just literally just looking to go to space and have these family dramas with the main Star Wars saga. And then, going into this, I just wanted to see a solo side adventure. And I think one of the things that I look at this film and think about the bigger picture, that I think there will be, I know there's not going to be a Solo 2, but I really do, I talk a lot of TV, but I think that there's going to be elements in this particular movie that we will see in the future on a Disney Plus show, whether it be Crimson Peak, that whole thing, or, obviously not to spoil anything for David, but some particular characters that make an appearance at the end of this movie and a particular alliance. I think that will play a big part in the future of again, the TV realm of Star Wars. But for me, I was just sitting back, just having a good time. Yes, I nitpick the cinematography and talk about maybe we talked about the name that he was given and things like that. But for me, I'm just like, it's Star Wars, man. I'm just having a fun time. I'm glad that we got these films back in the theater, because again, there was a dark time that it was almost 10 plus or 12 years since we saw a Star Wars film. So I just appreciate these films. I have a good time with them. And just like Joe, I like the film for what it was. I don't rank it. Like I said, it's in my top. It was my number 8 or number 9. So it's not obviously in the top tier, but I have fun with this movie. So this is me personally.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't hate this movie, right? I don't hate any Star Wars movie, even Attack of the Clones. I don't hate it. But, and it's funny that when that character shows up, I really hated that, because it showed me that this film was more focused on, setting up, we can do all these more films, where it was not focused on telling a coherent story. Because I think this movie is clunky, and I think that there is an interesting story in here, because unpopular opinion, I like Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo. But I think just this movie just kind of needed to trim the fat, if you will. Like, there's so many different plot points that are going in so many different directions, where it doesn't really feel streamlined. And of course, bringing back Emilia Clarke this soon into the movie, I think was the wrong decision.
Yeah.
They could have given her like a cup of coffee before.
I agree.
Too.
Right.
For all those tuning in, we're at the 46-minute mark. But Dom, what's your take on all this? You're sitting up now. I noticed. You were a little comfy before. Is it getting real for you now?
I'm trying to see it. I'm also adjusting myself based on the screen, but also I'm pretty sure I'm secretly ADHD, so I can't sit still for 3 seconds. But
I know you're
and
ADHD.
I have to be. There's no other explanation. But no, it's funny because Brandon, what you actually brought up about Emilia Clarke coming back this soon is actually a really interesting point that a lot of people have had a problem with, which is the idea of it kind of kills off all the narrative tension, which is that Solo's kind of quest is to find this girl, and then boom, it's just she's back. And you're right, this is kind of the point in the movie where it just starts to feel like, oh, this is where we now have to do the obligatory thing, and you kind of just feel like, oh, this is kind of just an excuse to get them jump started on the quest for the Kessel Run now, Yeah,
where it's just like, oh, we know what's coming next because we've seen the films that chronologically take place afterwards.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That's my biggest problem with Rogue One. If we love Rogue, I know a lot of people love Rogue One because it's like, it ties in so well with Episode 4. But thinking about it, when you're watching it chronologically, you're not supposed to know what happens in Episode 4 yet, right? And you take out all the Star Wars canon, you take out the license, and that film completely falls apart, right?
See, it's interesting that you. It's interesting that you mentioned that, though, because I was actually watching Jeremy Johns' review of the Clone Wars today, and what his whole thing, and it actually kind of an interesting argument, is the idea of you shouldn't have to depend on extended canon material in order to kind of reinforce the movies. But at the same time, think about it. To me, at least, without the Clone Wars, the prequels would not be as legitimized as they are now. Like, to me, obviously you kind of seen this kind of new love and respect emerge for the prequels, especially in the wake of the new movies. But to me, that love does not exist without the goodwill that the Clone Wars TV series had built up over that many years that it had been on Cartoon Network. And I think it's kind of the same argument that you can make with Rogue One, where, I think that, yes, again, if you take out the original Star Wars movies, then yes, obviously Rogue One doesn't work. But the fact is, those movies do still exist. And again, and because Rogue One is building up to that, and to me at least, it does it so well. That's what makes that movie compelling and interesting. And also, David, to answer your question, yes, that is Paul Bettany from Priest, aka The Vision, and I actually have a little bit of a fun movie fact for you. That role was originally supposed to be Michael K. Williams from Boardwalk Empire playing an alien role, but they swapped him out last minute because of scheduling conflicts.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Good trivia.
Now, is it wrong that like the Clone Wars, and I do like the prequels going into it. What do you guys think about this? But like, the Clone Wars almost make me justify and almost want to bump up some of those prequel films in my overall ranking because of how good that show is and how elegantly it sort of just like justifies that there was a good story in those films. Like, is that like, how do you guys feel about that? You know, because I'm very conflicted, like trying to rank these movies now that I've seen, especially this last Clone Wars season.
But was there though? You know, you watch the original trilogy and everyone goes, oh, they were so great to cinema. You watch the prequels. Oh, these aren't very good. But if you watch 7 series of a TV show, you read all these comics, you play these video games, and you do so many hours of homework. Some newcomers going like, screw that. I'm not going to do that. It's like, oh, I got to read chapter 4 before I read chapter 3.5, you know? So that's my biggest argument to that, where it's like, of course, you know, watching the prequels, you know, as a Star Wars fan, after I watched the Clone Wars, I'm sure the lore is going to be more, you know, it's going to be a lot more of what am I trying to say here? You know, if the prequels are up here, there's so much more of an underbelly of just characters and stories and backstories. But, you know, the fact that these movies came out and everyone didn't like them, and then, oh, now that they're good because now we have 7 seasons of a TV show. The fact that you even needed to do that shows how broken the films were in the first place. You know what I mean? Where it's like, if I'm going to try to tell someone like, oh, you should watch Star Wars. Oh, well, where should I start? Well, first of all, you got to watch the prequels, but you can't really enjoy them unless you watch the 7 7 seasons of Clone Wars. And then you can watch Rogue One. Actually, you should watch the original trilogy first and then go back to Rogue One, because without that, it's like, you know what I mean? That's my biggest argument to that.
And
that makes sense.
That underbelly that you're talking about is what I want to see them dive into now when they get into new movies. Like, I'm okay with like, let's see what else was going on when it wasn't just focused on these same old characters, because clearly there's a major rebellion going on. There's all this crap. Show me what was happening, or don't go back like many years before and show me how it built up to that. I also have not watched the Clone Wars yet.
Yeah, me neither.
So
I'm enjoying it so far, but again, like the fact that you need to watch them for the prequels to be good, that whole mentality I am not a big fan of. You know what I mean? A film should be, you know, a newcomer can come into it and enjoy it, and a fan should come into it and enjoy it without having to do all this research. And that's why I think, you know, I talked about this with Avengers. I think that's why Avengers Infinity War was so great, is that people went to go see that movie, even though some of them had never even seen a Marvel film, right? Like my grandmother's like, Brandon, what's this Infinity War movie? Can I watch it with you? I'm like, okay, here's your cheat sheet. So, but she was like, it was amazing. I got to see all my favorite celebrities and the story and the Thanos and yada, yada, yada. But she hadn't seen any of the previous movies, right? So a film, obviously, if you watch the previous movies, it's going to be a lot more richer. A lot more richer. That's my grandmother. My mother's an English teacher. She's going to, you know, she's rolling in her grave for that. She's still alive. Going up.
God, so dark
anyway,
today, Brandon.
But you know what I mean, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess my thing is that I also hate sand, so I can really just relate to that character.
Of course you were going to bring that up.
So, yeah, you know, I see what you mean. There is a lot of homework that I think has to be done to appreciate the prequels. I guess I don't know. When I was a little kid, I was really into those trade disputes. And I think that's kind of why I'm going back to school for economics, you know? So I think it depends on the lens you come at it from, you know what I'm trying to
Inspired.
say?
Yeah, right. Inspired. The Trade Federation. No, and if I can actually chime in
this program.
If I can chime in with my 2 cents here, again, because I haven't been doing that nearly at all this entire night. It's not like I'm one of the co-hosts or anything. But the whole thing with me is that I was able to, my whole argument with there is, again, the idea of going back to the idea of Star Wars being for little kids. I watched The Phantom Menace when I was like 5 years old with my grandparents, and even all that long, boring dialogue where they're just talking about trade disputes and everything, I was still able to be entertained by that as a little kid. Maybe it was just because of all the flashy imagery and I really didn't actually know what they were talking about. And obviously, as I got older and like studied film and understood kind of what that movie was going for. I was like, oh, okay, now I understand why this movie was such a letdown for people in theaters. But again, also understanding like when I watched it, where we watched it, I think the fact of, because we were the generation that was our Star Wars for most of us growing up as kids, I think that there is something to be said there. Because at that point, again, that to me is kind of the idea of where this dispute between Star Wars fans starts, which is where, you have the old fans who have been waiting for some form of Star Wars, the franchise they love so much as kids, to come back. And this is the first time they're getting that. So obviously they're going to get let down, because in a way, it's kind of the same thing that happened with this new trilogy, where this new trilogy, again, was all the fans of we grew up with this idea of Star Wars in our heads, of we grew up with the prequels, but we didn't really know any better, and so we're so dependent on just like that taste of Star Wars that any new thing is gonna be a letdown, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's never gonna measure up to this crazy pedestal that we placed this franchise on. And now over to the LGBTQ rights for robots, because that's a thing now that this movie had to bring up.
Yeah,
it's a typical Disney LGBT inclusion. They're like, look, we did it.
Disney is proven time and time again that is nothing but just a shameless pat on the back. Yay, see how open-minded we are and inclusive we are when it comes to this thing, but we clearly don't care at all.
Is L3 the worst character in Star Wars?
I'd say the worst.
Maybe. I mean,
it's a waste of Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Low on the scale. Yeah, definitely low on the scale. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like, underused. Back to my original argument, like, not that this was a part of the talented cast I was talking about, but I just don't think I got to know anyone really in this film enough. And so, yeah, definitely, like, that's a good argument you could make. I certainly agree.
Yeah. I mean, and again, everyone, we can all bring in our screenwriter brains and go and like, oh, this would make the movie better. But I think if we introduced Lando much sooner and like kind of just trimmed off some of the characters and just make it a lot more simple, then I think this movie, at least I think it would have been better. But then again, it's just me saying it and then it being filmed. Obviously, there's a lot to go into that, but I'll just put my screenwriter cap on and say that maybe I would have liked to have, childish Brandino here. That's
no, I get it.
But yeah, it's been earlier. Yeah.
It's tough to separate for sure, especially like the film school and the fandom when it comes to Star Wars for me. But I remember being so hyped when Donald Glover got announced for the role. I was like, wow, that couldn't be any more of a perfect fit. And to be honest with you, this is the part of the film where like me and my friends were like in the theaters, like, okay, we have a chance here. We have a chance to talk about something good at Chili's after this, because it starts to work a little bit here for me, and that's why I can't figure out where it goes wrong.
Tonight's stream sponsored by Chili's.
Yeah, officially.
Wait for one of those jokes to come in. Yeah,
Dom,
no,
did
that's
we talk
actually
about that? Did we talk about the Donald Glover casting where we like, chatting back and forth?
I don't think we ever talked about it extensively. My whole thing with it is that I'm probably one of the only people that you're going to hear say this. I just found it kind of underwhelming, because my whole thing with it is that, wow, you get Donald Glover, who by that point, by the time this movie came out, I'd already been acclimated to Community, and I had already sat through 2 seasons of Atlanta, which to me is like one of the best things that's been brought to television in these last couple of years. And so I was very well, and that was like all long after like me like getting caught up on Donald Glover. So I was used to Donald Glover as a personality and just as an actor. And if anything, to me, like my whole thing, it's one of those things where, similar to him as Miles Morales, it's a great casting in theory, but just in terms of how it's executed, like, look at him. He's just slouching back. He's barely enunciating. Like, where is all the charm? Where is the intrigue, here? Like, if anything, to me, this is a part of the movie I'm like, wait a minute. Is the guy that everybody who thought was going to be terrible as Han Solo doing a better job than Donald Glover as Lando? I'm like, I was almost doing like a 360 in my seat when I was watching this, but I'm like, I can't ignore what my eyes and my brain are telling me.
You don't like him then, do you?
It's not that I don't like him. It's that I don't know if it's the direction or what, but he's just not giving like the type of performance that I know he's capable of, especially when it comes to like young Lando,
Elliot, what do you think?
Crazy that, Elliot.
No, I'm a big.
I haven't heard him yet.
No, I'm a big Gambino fan, and like Dom was saying, I've been following his career for a while, for the Community to Atlanta's definitely one of my favorite shows, and him as a artist, I'm a big fan of that too. But in regards to his performance, I think that kind of might go into, you know, having two different voices, or I should say 3 different voices, from Ron Howard coming in to Chris and Lord Miller, and maybe their interpretation of Lando, and then obviously him being an actor himself, putting on his own spin. So again, I give these actors as much credit as possible, because again, when you have so many different cooks in the kitchen of how to do this, how to portray this, you don't want to, you know, impersonate, you know, Lando. You don't want to make an impersonation of Han Solo. So again, I think, you know, these actors were put through, I mean, this isn't life and death, but I mean, there was a lot of creativity that was involved in this movie. And I think that they did the best they could with, again, bringing in their own take to the character. We had 2 writers that we were working with for probably 2 years with Chris and Lord Miller. Then we have this new voice coming in, and you have producers with their input. So I was fine with Lando's performance. I didn't really dive too deep into, you know, the charisma and everything. I thought he had really good charm and charisma, and I really thought that he brought some energy to the film, and I liked his performance, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just funny, because the whole thing is that I always go back to the Star Trek prequels, right? To me, like that, it's 2 examples that I think of where the idea of perfect casting when it comes to the younger casting, when it comes to these iconic characters who we've really only seen one version of, you know, and I'm talking like a Batman or a Superman character where we've seen like 13 different actors that have played them. Like for me at least, so the idea is that, okay, you get these younger actors that are playing these characters that you're already kind of very, very familiar with. But the idea is that you want them to bring something of their own to the table and not feel like they're doing an impression. And I feel like with both the Star Trek prequels that ironically enough, JJ directed, and X-Men First Class with the casting specifically of McAvoy and Fassbender as young Xavier and Magneto, those castings are able to bring something to the table where it feels like they're contributing their own unique voice while still embodying that iconic character that you're familiar with. And that's something that you'd expect from, again, it was Alden Ehrenreich's biggest trip up and biggest hurdle that he had to overcome with his portrayal of Han Solo, and it's the same thing that Donald Glover kind of had to overcome. But if anything, I feel like Donald Glover got less flack for it because, you know, he's Donald Glover at that point. He's a very well-established personality versus Ehrenreich, who's still kind of an up-and-coming actor. So when you kind of just that thought process that goes into it, I think that there is something to account for that, especially when it comes off of like, it feels like the bigger name actor is the one that's doing more of an impression versus the up-and-coming actor, to me, is actually trying to give something new in terms of that performance.
Yeah, David, what's your take on Donald Glover's performance so far in this film?
I think he's terrible. If I got to be honest, it's just, I mean, that just flat.
Well, I'm not crazy.
Oh, I love it.
No,
I love it.
It's that's what's his name? Howard. Ron Howard's brother.
Yeah. That's bad if you don't even know his name. Everyone knows him as you're more famous.
Hey, come on, dude. He's done like 300 movies, by the way. Yeah. But I was trying to figure out why this droid has a conscience. I don't understand how this is working out.
Really confusing.
What the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
So David, you don't know what the hell's happening right now then, in other words.
I'm trying to read the subtitles and try to figure it out, but this is almost like in the last Terminator movie when he settled down and had a kid. I mean, come on, what is happening?
Yeah, that's right.
Like Terminators don't do that, guys. But anyway, sorry. But yeah, I don't like he's on the unlikable characters. So I think him, Han Solo, Emilia Clarke, they are very unlikable characters for me. The guy that played Priest was the only one that really kind of amped it up for me as far as like being someone that I kind of fear a little bit. But I don't know. Chewbacca is the best character so far.
So a bad start getting you on this Star Wars train. Then, in other words, a very bad start, huh?
Yeah, I mean,
the words right now. David's favorite character this whole movie so far, and the one who's given the best performance is the guy whose entire vocal range consists of.
That's amazing.
Almost like Groot, you know. Literally. But I mean, yeah, it's just, I mean, I'm trying to just keep up, you know, and listen to you guys at the same time. But I have seen better impressions of Lando, just from like, do you guys remember? Okay, here's the old sketch show, In Living Color. You guys remember that show?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, many times they did impressions of Lando that were spot on. That this guy is not nailing the mark. And like someone said earlier, it's more than just slouching in your seat. You know, you got to have that swagger. You got to have that machismo. And him trying to change his voice up, you know, to sound like Lando, it's not really cutting it for me.
Gotcha. Joe, what's your take on all this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, Elliot, take it away, man. Then we'll
go for it.
That's what I was going to say. Just from a, you know, I'm not an actor, but I think we all went to film school. But you know, when you're told to play, as we mentioned, this iconic character that we, you know, saw from Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. If you're an actor, do you portray? Do you want a carbon copy of the character? Do you want their own touch on the character? Do you want to take producer notes? Do you want to take acting classes? I mean, I just would imagine how stressful this must have been, especially with the lore. Again, we were just talking about Star Wars fans. Do I impress the fans? Do I bring something new? It's a tough balancing act. And I know it didn't work for, obviously David's not liking it so far. And, and also with Dom, but I just, like I said, I'm fine with the character so far, and I think that he's adding his own little flavor to the character, and we see that a little bit later on in the movie. But again, I could just only imagine being in that writer's room or being an actor with the rehearsals, just being like, how do I approach this character?
Yeah. And it's not only the individual performances too. You got to keep into consideration that this is a team up movie, right? So people's the characters' chemistry with each other has to be into consideration. Yeah, that's a problem for me because I think they work on their own, but together, it's like I was trying to even think of the plot of Solo before I even came on this watch along. I honestly couldn't remember it, and I've seen this film quite a few times. I just. That's a problem, right? If a film is not able to leave that kind of impact on you, then then why bother?
I think my whole thing with Lando, real quick, is just that he doesn't really capture like the freewheeling side of the Lando that I know, and like the sarcasm, and he can be serious and tough and whatever, but also has that little that bite to him, right? Like the Lando laugh, and you don't quite get that from this portrayal, unfortunately.
And I guess too, just for because I know Brandon and Dom and Chris, you guys are definitely more in the lore than I am. So like from this timeline to where we see Lando from Empire Strikes Back, like what's that age difference in regards to, he's now 20 years, 30 years from now, he's been on the streets more. He's been a smuggler like Han Solo. So obviously his personality and his personality traits are going to be different. But how long of like a time gap between that?
So if I'm remembering this correctly in the just from a strictly chronology wise, so I know for a fact that this movie takes place before Star Wars Rebels. How long, I don't know, because the thing is that Lando's character pops up in the 8th or 9th episode, the 12th episode of the first season of Star Wars Rebels. And the whole thing is Rebels takes place in the last 5 years that lead up to the events of Rogue One and A New Hope. And I don't remember exactly how many years were in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, but give or take, but if you want to calculate all those years, I'd say it's probably about like a 10, 15 year gap, maybe 20. But again, like that's a lot. Like I'm much more familiar with like the specific years of like the prequel trilogy than I am with the original trilogy. But that's how I know how this movie lines up within the chronology.
Because I guess that's another thing. That was another kind of question I guess I had for you guys in regards to just that, putting expectations of what you wanted from the character to what we actually got. Did you guys, I guess, as Joe was just saying, in regards to his charisma and his swagger, where that character was 10 to 15 years ago, as we all know, I was completely different 10 years ago than I am now. And I'm going to be different 10 years and 20 years from I am, from that. So I'm just kind of worried, like where you guys were at in regards to expectations of what you expect from the character to what you actually got. Did you want a carbon copy, an impersonation?
That's why I wanted to punch in really quick, guys, and I wanted to answer that when you had initially said it. If I'm guessing here, this is a prequel, like you guys were talking about. So in that sense, do we need a carbon copy? Hell yeah, we do, because it needs to follow the storyline exactly. I'm not an actor, we're not actors, but I think if you're doing something that's a reimagining or a reboot, something like that, that's not following directly 100% to this storyline of what we have before it, I think you do have to put a carbon copy. Unless otherwise, then you can kind of throw your own spin on it a little bit. You know what I'm saying? That's just my personal thing.
See, David, that's where I got to step in and kind of disagree with you there, because again, I bring back my Star Trek and X-Men First Class arguments, because to me, it's like those are direct prequels that do lead in. But with McAvoy and Fassbender in First Class, and with all the actors that they got for the Star Wars prequels, like to me, they are not doing carbon copies of the original. They are kind of adding their own unique and original spin, but they're portraying the characters at kind of as they would see where they would go. Like they're not being expressly doing, okay, do Shatner. They're like J.J. Abrams is not telling Chris Pine, okay, do Shatner, because that's just like not good acting advice, just like I'm sure that like Ron Howard is not telling Donald Glover, okay, do Billy D. Williams, but it's just kind of the idea of, okay, you don't necessarily have to kind of do a carbon copy that leads up to where we think the character is going to be. Just do something kind of interesting and give your own spin. And that's what I feel like is missing from Glover's performance.
Right. What I'll say to this is like, and on all levels, this film isn't working. For example, the blue milk scene in Rogue One, that worked for me, but that little touching on the chess game that Chewbacca hates to lose at, that just, it felt so forced and contrived. And that's how I feel about pretty much every single one of these characters in their roles right now. Dom, I think you couldn't be any more right when you said that. I mean, you know, like, it doesn't feel like they're going to turn into the characters that they eventually turn into. And so that's why I put Mike's comment on this up on the screen here. I could see maybe there's a case for that. Personally, I disagree with that. These characters feel like maybe this is like the multiverse 2 or the Earth 7 version of these characters, but these are not the characters that I grew up watching in the films. Like, what do you guys think about that? Am I crazy? Do you agree? Because right now, you know,
Mike, you're right. I think you're right, dude. I mean, Ewan McGregor kind of did more of a carbon copy when he opened his throat to sound more like Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you know, like, he has more of that. He definitely tried to alter his voice, tried to alter his mannerisms to try to get that. But I don't know, dude. I think that Danny Glover, or not Danny Glover.
Rookie mistake. Rookie mistake right there. Right, they are not related in any way,
shape, or form. We've all done it. Come on.
Yeah. Mr. Glover, you know who I'm talking about. I think he just captures that essence, you know, when he's kind of flirting with Kira, you know what I mean? And, you know, like, Lando's kind of a schmoozer, right? I don't know. I think he has that. I think he has the essence of the character, where it doesn't have to be a carbon copy, but at least as it gets, you know, like a younger version of Lando is kind of like this. I mean, sure, why not? And again, he's not the main character, right? He wasn't the main character of Star Wars. If they're doing like a prequel to Luke, and then they did like just the essence of Luke, then I'd say, okay, you may want to go for more of a carbon copy. But since that Lando was never a vital part, I mean, yes, he did. Spoilers for Return of the Jedi. Yes, he did blow up the Death Star, but I think that the essence is there. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but
I can see that. I totally can see that. My question, though, is going back to the comment about the chess and that stuff seeming kind of forced. What else do you get from a prequel, though? Like, that's, I feel like in a prequel, you're getting call forwards, call back. I don't know, call forwards.
I guess callbacks, because I mean, where they were at the headspace of writing it, that is a hard thing to say. Yeah. You know, for me, I don't see the prequels as trying to be like, you came to the theaters because of this feeling, you know, 20 whatever something years ago, right? To me, yes, there obviously has to be, because like, it's like a part of, like, now we know the Skywalker saga thanks to Disney or whatever, right? It all encompasses that storyline, that family's lineage, but there's so much new things that they introduced with it. And yeah, a lot of it they tried and they failed, but I kind of respect that, like, broadening the scope of Star Wars, you know? So like, these little callbacks that Disney did, yeah, that's cool. And, you know, that's like a nice little nod to the fans. But I think for this film, like, we should have focused more on making it work rather than that. And I just I don't know, I guess I kind of disagree. Like, I don't think the prequels really did that much of a nudge. I mean, obviously, aside from like them having to tie in, being that these are the characters where they were before we saw them in the original films, you know? But I mean, what do you guys think, you know?
What's the question?
Like the comparisons, basically, you know, from the prequels, right? And the original trilogy. It's so hard to talk about this stuff with all the time skips, but you know, like, do you think that the prequels were like super not heavy? Because I think that was a very poor jest, a poor way to put the little chess game in there. It didn't feel classy to me. It didn't feel like it fit the moment. It just kind of felt like, oh, they're on the Falcon now, so they should obviously turn that game on and play it. You know, it just felt forced. It didn't feel nuanced to me. But like what's your take on that? Did the prequels feel like they were forcing like nostalgia down your throat, or were they trying to do something new? Because I feel like for all their failures, they were trying to do something a little new.
Well, I recommend watching the Red Letter Media prequel reviews, and they talk about all the comparisons between the prequels and the original trilogy, because there's just so many of them that I can't even count. But there's a lot of poetry. It's sort of, they rhyme, right? Like the classic George Lucas quote. But I think that there's that's Star Wars. Right? You got to put in things that people remember, right? Like that is Rogue One in a nutshell. It's Star Wars porn. Remember this, remember this, remember this, remember this, remember this, remember this, remember this. I think that one was forced for sure. But and again, it all depends on what you want from Star Wars. Do you want to go into Star Wars to see a compelling story, or do you want to see all this, you know, all the ships and all the lightsabers and all the aliens and all these things? It really depends. But I think that in some cases that they were definitely forced in this movie and in Rogue One and in the prequels for sure.
See, this is where I'm going to jump in and kind of like tackle that question, because to me, like I said, and this might just be me, I might be crazy, but to me, like, and this is kind of where I come from, is just, again, kind of bringing back, the screenwriting mentality, the film school mentality, is I'll tell you, to me, what it is that, kind of, again, to disagree with you, Brandon, to me, what makes Rogue One work versus what doesn't make something like this work. And I understand all your points. The idea of kind of bringing up is like, oh, this is kind of just there because fans recognize it. But that in and of itself, that's something that's kind of going to be apparent whenever you have a big franchise like this, because again, it's a franchise that has been well known. So it's going to have fans, and obviously the filmmakers themselves are going to be fans. So those references are going to be in there regardless. To me, what it comes down to, again, is first and foremost story. And I'll tell you what it is for me that Rogue One works, because again, I've heard all the complaints and criticisms about Rogue One, and I understand that, but to me, what makes it work is tension. To me, Rogue One has a tension that is ultimately missing from this movie, because Rogue One, at the end of the day, say what you will about those characters, at the end of the day, what is their goal? What is their mission? To get the Death Star plans, because if not, their rebellion will be crushed, and any hope that they have of winning will be lost, and they could all die. And to emphasize that, the third act goes all out in order to reinforce that point, literally to the point where it murders all of its main characters. Now, again, like universe expansion semantics aside, that's the case. And that, to me, that sense of underlying tension is never lost throughout that entire movie. With this, where does the tension come from? Like, what is to me the central tension, a conflict of Han Solo? Was it to find his ex-girlfriend? He did that halfway through the movie. Was it to find his name? Was it to get his ship? Because to me, none of those are interesting or compelling story points to me. Like, that to me feels like just like fun, dumb Star Wars fan fiction. And that to me is kind of why the extra elements of like, oh, see, this chess piece is just here because it's kind of here because Star Wars fans recognize it. That to me is way more apparent in this movie than anything I saw in Rogue One.
Couldn't agree more, Dom. Could not agree more.
That's just kind of where I'm coming from with it. Yep. Like, to me, like,
thank you for saying what I was struggling to say.
You're welcome. That's what I do. Yeah. But Brandon, I'm not trying to discount any of your points, but that's just kind of where I'm coming from with it, No,
I get it. Like when I saw Rogue One for the first time, of course, being a Star Wars fan, it was fun to see everything that I'd seen before. But watching it again, I hate those characters. I don't know anything about Jyn Erso. I don't know anything about Cassian Andor. Like, they don't give me a chance to really get to relate to them or even get to like them. Right. So that when they die, it's like, all right, great. And Bodhi Rook, like, give me a break. Like, get him off screen. Like that, like his character was just completely useless. So, and, talk about like charm and charisma. I think Alden Ehrenreich has it. I don't think anyone in Rogue One has it at all.
Yeah, I feel that. Elliot, man, are you feeling the tension at this point in the film? Like, where do you stand with all this?
Yeah, again, man, just like I'm doing now, I'm just, I'm in space with these characters. And again, yeah, of course, from a script wise, some of the tension, like you said, isn't there. And that's really, a big part into going to a movie experience is you want to have some emotion, and they're trying to invoke a certain emotion. It's just not landing, as far as the tension, because we all know, where these characters, where most of the characters end up in regards to we see them in the future versus, Rogue One. We know that how some of those characters ended. But anyway, regarding kind of just the conversation you guys were having about, callbacks and nostalgia, and to a certain extent, is even though I enjoy this film, I enjoy Rogue One. I'm in the same boat as Joe. Like, I'm ready to look at other characters, and that's one of the reasons why, even though Mandalorian does do a lot of callbacks, but it's kind of a a different area of Star Wars, which I'm so excited to get into that eventually. But I think one of the biggest thing about this film in particular, and even Rogue One, was that story, was it necessary? Did we need to learn about, did they need to make a solo film? And I think their biggest thing about making this film was, let's pick arguably one of our most popular characters in the original trilogy that people always know and love. And let's do, I don't know if you guys remember back in 2008, 2009, there was supposed to be a Fox show with George Lucas. It was supposed to be about the underground and all that stuff. And I think they took those two ideas and wanted to make as much money as possible. And obviously it didn't. So again, I think my biggest thing with this particular film and Rogue One was just the necessity of it all, and was it needed by the to be seen? I think that might be the biggest problem with this. So,
yeah, Joe, what's your take on all this, man?
I'm going back to what I said before. I mean, I think I totally agree with what Elliot's saying. I think we need to get somewhere new with these characters. But I think if you're going to do something like revisit an original character from the original trilogy, you have to do the callbacks. That's the point of doing a film like this. Where they're going to try to introduce things that remind the diehard fans of why they loved the character in the first place. Did they succeed in that? I'm not going to say they did, but I do think that's why we're getting some of those cheesy things where you're like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. I remember that. Or, oh, look, it's that chess piece again, or chessboard.
Yeah, I
agree with you.
David,
Totally.
your first time,
but
are you feeling tension or?
What's up?
Oh no, David, I'm just wondering, are you feeling the tension in your first watch through this film, or where's your head at with all this right now?
Yeah, so usually with these watch-alongs, I'll turn the sound all the way down and just watch with the, so I had to actually amp up the music while you guys are talking so I can get that full immersive feel, because usually the music is what brings out the tension. And I got a little bit of it. Usually these scores are really, really good to me, so they, get a thumbs up in that department. As far as visually, what's going on, it's not too crazy, obviously, but it's cool seeing like the little robots going around. That little one that was stomping on the control board right there, that was fun. These are definitely family fun friendly movies that I'm not really accustomed to. I like the edgier side, I guess, but it's okay, but it's not holding my attention too well. Like it's just movie. It's just not anything incredible to me. You know what I mean? It's just okay. Here we go, and nothing's happening, and we got the Snowpiercer scene, and that was cool. And then nothing's happening. So
yeah,
and then this is kind of like where we're at.
It's literally just visual noise. This entire movie so far.
Yeah,
let me
that's
just
what I'm
say
getting
this.
so far.
The most engaging part of this watch along is getting you guys' thoughts and you guys' feedback. I needed an excuse to rewatch this film to see if it was as much of a drag as it was, and it clearly is, in my opinion. So I'm really glad that I get to do it and hang out with you guys right now to have some sort of stimulation while watching this thing. And maybe that's a bit of an over-exaggeration, but maybe that's also how I'm feeling right now,
You over-exaggerate something? That never happens.
Never happens. But guys, I don't want to take away from the film too much, but the chat is going absolutely crazy with this debate. So real quick, let's go around the room and settle this once and for all. Applebee's or Chili's, Dom?
I'm bowing out.
I haven't been to Applebee's in years, so I'll just say Chili's because that's what's on my more recent mind. But to me, they both taste like exactly the same.
Tim Horton.
There's
Joe,
no
what about
discernible
you?
difference to me in flavor between those two places.
It's Applebee's in general, but for the salsa and chips, I go to Chili's.
Okay, David.
Yeah, so Applebee's holds it true to my heart because that was like one of the first dates that my girlfriend and I went on. So we didn't eat food, we just had drinks, so it was just Applebee's for me. Yeah.
Elliot, what about you, man? You Chili's or Applebee's
been
guy?
forever since I've been to either one of them. I think probably would I go with Chili's because was that where Jennifer Aniston worked in Office Space? Was it Chili's or Applebee's?
I think it was
No,
Chili's.
that was Flingers. Wasn't that Flingers?
Wasn't it like
You gotta get your flair.
It was like impersonating one of those bigger companies.
Pretty much, yeah. It was like a Chili's knockoff.
Yeah. But
Now, Brandon,
I don't have a fight in this dog because I don't like either one of those restaurants.
Fighting this dog. I love it.
I love that. That's so good. Brandon, do you even have you said something about like there not being something in your area or whatever? Like,
So Chili's, there's only 12 of them, and they're in Alberta, which I do not live in. So I've never been to Chili's. And Applebee's, I think, is only in Ontario, and I do not live in Ontario. So I don't. Honestly, I think I've been to the States a lot. I go to the States a lot. I don't think I've actually ever been to either of them. So I'm gonna go with White Spot, a Vancouver only restaurant. If any of you guys come up here, they are some of the best burgers you will ever have.
Gotcha. Mike says TGI Fridays, and I want to let you guys know that I have not been to a Chili's since I went and saw Solo. I had not been to a Chili's many times before I went and saw Solo. So I love how this really became a thing in the chat tonight. So I'm going to go with Applebee's just because, we lost our sponsorship. I'm going to go with Applebee's just because I've been there and I can remember what it tastes like. But I think, Dom's pretty spot on in saying all those places that level taste the same.
Chili's did give us a solid quote though, or call back to The Office. I feel God in this Chili's tonight.
Oh yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Okay.
Didn't Pam just get banned from Chili's?
Yeah.
Brandon, look at that. Brian has Applebee's in Ontario, man. You jealous?
Yeah, he's one of my buddies.
I feel like that says something about this movie. Is that the best thing we're going to be able to get out of this chat is Applebee's or Chili's.
Yeah, and we don't have.
Hey, Dom, that's why they come to our channel, right?
Yep.
Oh God. So guys, I gotta say this fight scene I think the set design is really cool. You know,
Yes, I'll give
they
you
always
that.
do a good job with that, but I'm just not compelled right now. And I hate to be the negative Nancy because I'm having so much fun chatting with you guys, but I'm just not I'm not in this right now.
Jesus.
I was gonna say the same thing. The set design looks great, except for that one character that keeps running with Chewbacca. He looks like totally a guy in a suit. Like
it looks like a Planet of the Apes
I agree with you
character.
there.
Yeah,
like, that's literally
exactly, like a
that's
caveman.
like an old school like Star Wars mask. And also this, I also
what
just want to
happened
talk on this scene real quick, where apparently, Lando, like the scene that we completely brushed over before, which is apparently, Lando has sex with droids. That's a thing that this movie established too.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we missed that before. Yeah, no, there was a scene earlier while we were talking, which is where when Emilia Clarke's sitting in the cockpit with the Phoebe Waller-Bridge droid, she's saying like, "Oh, Lando's very talented." And in the theater, I did some research afterwards. I'm like, is that supposed to insinuate that Lando has sex with his droids? You know?
No.
And like it was kind of one of those like confirmed, not confirmed things. And it's like, yeah, why does that need to be in this movie?
That's going to be a Disney Plus show coming up,
right?
Limited series.
Yeah, and I'm the hipster for not liking this film in
droids.
Rogue One more, huh?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Wow.
I mean,
was I wrong? Was The Last Jedi better than this movie?
Yes.
Chill. All right.
Yeah, I
Don't.
think so.
no.
Yes.
You guys think so?
And I'm not a big fan of Last Jedi. And you know what? That's coming from a guy who loved it in the theater. All the twists and turns and the subverting expectations. I was on board. And then I watched it again, and then the subverting expectation novelty completely wore off. So that's the one film that I can look at and say opinions can change. But actually, I wanted to talk, Joe, you're talking about the whole like callback thing.
Yeah.
I think it depends on like, I totally get it. And I don't have a problem with calling back, but it's, it's the whole thing of the world, just the rules of the world, or, let's bring up like the chessboard again, or let's bring up this again, where, like in The Mandalorian, we go back to Tatooine again. But you know what? It kind of makes sense because it is a hot spot for, the Hutts and different bounty hunters and things like that. So, of course, if it's something that we know, but it does kind of tie into the story where I think what Chris is saying is that, we're on the Millennium Falcon. We have to see the game again. We see it in Force Awakens. We see it in Rise of Skywalker. We see those things. So I think it all depends in, the rules of the world versus, hey, remember this? It's going to be in a new toy set here in your local Disney store. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which I think that last point is exactly what I'm thinking is, I totally understand why they do it. I'm not saying I love it, but I'm just saying I understand why, they're on the Millennium Falcon. They're going to play with that chess set because that's what Disney does. Like Disney's whole point in making this movie was to try to bring out that nostalgia and get those people who were interested in the characters before to come back and, enjoy the characters again, learn a little bit more about them without Disney taking that big leap into a new trilogy, a new series, or new whatever. It's the same with Rogue One, but to a lesser extent. I mean, with Rogue One, they at least kind of created, new characters that we had never met before and, tied it into the story. But
yeah,
it just goes back to my point earlier that they just need something new. Like it's time.
Hey, David, I'm wondering, I want to know your opinion on this final action scene because you know what? I will admit, even though I'm not the biggest fan of this movie, I do really enjoy this final climax. Or I guess it's not really the climax, but the
actual castle run,
the biggest action scene.
The action set piece in the movie,
The spectacle.
I was snickering over here at that. They really try to humanize that whole droid scene with her dying or L7 and L7, and it's like,
yeah,
geez, what's going? What is happening right now? This movie is just just falling apart right now for me. But
exactly.
L7,
are you talking about the fight scene that we just saw?
No, it's coming up.
Oh,
the equal rights droid.
Okay.
Yeah,
this scene right here. That's why I'm wondering. Seeing this in IMAX, I have to admit, like it was pretty sweet. And I saw this twice, and I saw it with my father, and and he doesn't really say much during movies, and then he just just straight out. Oh my goodness, straight out just swears. That is cool. So I'm wondering to see what you think of this one.
Yeah, I feel like this would be an awesome experience, in IMAX or something like that. Even though there was a lot of drawn out dialogue, I mean, the action scenes are obviously what make this. I mean, you see most of this in the trailer, from what I remember.
Yeah, but this scene in particular, I think it's really well done.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the sound and the visuals and the computer animation is always on point. Like the spectacle is always on point. But I going into this, I couldn't be any less I just couldn't be any less excited, it just.
I was in the theater.
Not
I mean,
working.
I was into it. I wasn't thrilled and excited, like, oh my God, I wonder what's going to happen. But I was at least enjoying myself. But this is a total non-rewatch movie for me. As we're watching this right now, I'm realizing that I enjoyed it because it was a time that I went to the theater and had a good time. But it's not something I would just pull up again to be like, oh, let's explore that lore again.
I think that's how I felt about our watch along last night with Iron Man 2. Afterwards, I was like, yeah, it wasn't that great. Like, I mean, I could wait another decade before I see it. Like,
yeah, I'm with you. And, like the reason why I'm going so in, especially Joe, like we kind of just met before the stream, like Star Wars is one of the reasons why, like, I even picked up a guitar. Like I wanted to create something, because I was in music by trade first. And then I developed my love for the other types of the arts. And now I'm here. So like for something of this brand, of the Star Wars brand, to let me down in this much of a way, like it actually legitimately hurts. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm being so hard on it, because I just have such a high bar of expectation from it. And this just really fell short,
What does this have on Rotten Tomatoes? I'm just curious.
What was that?
It bombed too bad, honestly. I think it was like 70%.
Right, but the point being that no matter how much money it made, it was never going to make up its budget, which is kind of where the Justice League comparison come in, which is where the reshoots of this movie and plus where it was released, with it being, again, like you said before, like only like a month after Infinity, like not even a month after Infinity War, where with how much the reshoots of this movie ballooned up its budget plus the marketing, like there was no way this movie was ever going to make enough to make a profit, because it's the whole movie has to make twice its budget in order to make a profit, and this movie was never going to hit it.
And the fact that it came out 3 months after Last Jedi, which was a divisive
that didn't help either.
A divisive film. Okay, 70%. A flawed yet fun, fast-paced space adventure. Solo Star Wars story should satisfy newcomers to the saga as well as longtime fans who check their expectations at the theater door. That's nice.
That's pretty good, though. I mean, that's pretty solid in terms of, like, I think what we're experiencing now. Like, you go into it just as a movie. Yeah, okay, maybe you'll enjoy it, but don't expect anything big from it.
And I was going to actually ask Chris that. He just mentioned too about like kind of expectations. I just wonder where you guys stand with, especially something so near and dear to, whether it be this was the first film you saw with your grandfather who might have passed away, or someone that was really close to you, in regards to like expectations. How do you guys go into something? I know for like Brandon, I know you love James Bond, and I'm just hypothetical. You go into No Time to Die and it's a terrible film. Like, how do you guys handle those expectations and what you actually get with the film compared to what you walked out of the film?
I mean, you can be excited for sure. Like, you can be counting down the days, but as soon as you're going, this is going to be the greatest film of all time and no one can tell me otherwise, that's when you get into some real problems. And I know a lot of people, discussing with films on YouTube and Instagram, people will have that mindset. And it always baffles me because likable characters, intriguing story, emotional impact. I don't care what the film is, if it's a part of a franchise or if it's a part of a student film, that's all I want. As long as a film has that, I'm good, right? So as for No Time to Die, of course, I'm looking forward to it because I'm a James Bond fan. But all I need is likable characters, an intriguing story, and an emotional impact. And then like the icing on the cake could be some great action. And if it's a comedy, then make sure that the jokes land.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. Yeah, well, everything that you just said and more. My whole thing when it comes to expectations, especially now in this internet-dominated age where it becomes just easier and easier for things to get nitpicked and ruined before the movie's even released, I find expectations to be a really dangerous thing. So my whole thing, and I'm sorry to say this, is because, again, with how, especially when it comes to blockbuster things, much more so than indie things, is just with how misleading trailers can be, with just like how micromanaged and all the different movie factors that go into the property before they even come out, almost to the point where the internet kind of almost tells you exactly what you're getting before the movie even comes out. So you don't even have the chance to be surprised by anything anymore. So my kind of whole stance on it is just kind of enjoy what you can get and kind of don't set yourself up to be screwed over, if that makes any sense,
But I wanted to, just going back into that question, we were, just jumping back to two weeks ago when we all saw Endgame and Infinity War. We wanted certain answers, questions to be answered, certain characters to meet on screen for the first time, and obviously stick the landing because we invested. It's not life and death, but we spent hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars on movie tickets, merchandise, buying a Blu-ray. And if it didn't meet those expectations, we come in a little bit, disappointed or upset. And some people take it to the extreme and they boycott a movie and they say, terrible things online. So It's just always a fascinating conversation. I mean, when it comes to like expectations and exceeding those and meeting those and you know, all that different stuff that involves with it. So it's just and as Dom just mentioned, with the age of the internet and going into a film, you know, we see a package, especially a blockbuster film, 15 trailers, 20 TV spots. You know, the red carpet events 2 weeks before the worldwide release, and you have the Rotten Tomato score, you have, you know, all the different Reddit threads and theories and all that stuff. So it's just it's really, really interesting to be.
And that's not even getting into like the social media discourse that's already surrounding the movie. Like, just to put an example, like I don't know if you guys have seen, but the trailer for that Judd Apatow movie, The King of Staten Island, you know, that trailer come out, and I'm in a Facebook group where already, like, it's almost like these guys, like, I'm seeing like 20 different comments where it's almost like these guys have already made up their minds on what they're gonna think about the movie before the movie's even had a chance to come out, like based off a trailer.
Right.
I think that a good example, real quick, of the of what you're talking about, Elliot, is looking at what's going on with the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them franchise. You know, Harry Potter in general was built up to be such a thing, and then the you know, Fantastic Beasts is kind of a, you know, obviously a diversion. It's a different type of story and different characters and all. But the second one, when that came out, just really it was terrible.
So I saw that film, just to that point, Joe. I saw that film, and I haven't seen. So I actually have seen more Fantastic Beasts films than I've seen Harry Potter films, which is I've seen both of them. And I've only seen one Harry Potter film. So to me, I've never felt so neglected as like a movie going on, because I didn't know what was going on in that film. Like,
no one did. So and I think that's what's kind of interesting though, is because, and I'm thinking about this as you're talking though, is one of the things that we're seeing with that series is they're taking more time to go back to the drawing board, rewrite those scripts. And they're also talking about like trying to bring Daniel Radcliffe back in at some point for like some sort of who knows, but you know, it's they're scrounging now. So
yeah, you know what? That's a great example, Joe. It really is, because even like my sister and I, like next to Star Wars, it's Harry Potter. Yeah, right. Star Wars, Harry Potter, and James Bond. That's my forte. But you know, and the thing is, like, I would have Harry Potter fans defend the second Fantastic Beasts movie and go, well, you had to read all the books and you had to read all the lore. Of course you didn't get it, idiot. It's like, all right, well, first of all, thanks. And then second of all, like, you shouldn't have to do so much homework to get into. Well, they had a British accent too. I won't insult them.
Oh wow, yeah.
But you know, you shouldn't have to do so much homework to go in. Sure, there might be some things that you might not understand, but even in Empire Strikes Back, like Han Solo goes, "Yeah, I got to go pay off my debt to Jabba the Hutt because he's like that's a small, quick little line to like sum up something that happened in the previous movie." Yeah, that's a nice little line. Okay, great. An alien, like aliens, like this thing came aboard my ship and destroyed my crew. Done.
That's
now,
what I'm talking about.
There, so
you don't even notice that as like a little bit of exposition there, though, because it's just so interwoven into it's just so into the character, and it's so necessary that it works. And this film clearly doesn't work for me. I mean, you know, I got like, it's just upsetting. Like I was saying earlier, man, like I want to be in this moment right now. They're getting sucked into this vortex. I want to feel for them. It's also a little difficult too, because you know they're going to make it out because of where these things go. But if it's a good enough story, if it's a good enough narrative, that shouldn't matter. That also shouldn't matter, though.
Quick question for David too, just going back to we were talking about Fantastic Beasts and putting in these different Easter eggs and making the audience maybe want to go back and read a book and watch the movies. But just curious, David, as far as where you're at with this movie, does it make you want to go back and maybe revisit some of the films and to fall in love with these characters? Like, where are you at as far as just like the?
I was actually thinking about just rewatching some of these scenes just with the full, you know, immersive sound, just in my living room. I'm on my computer, just watching this on Netflix online. But that scene was pulling me in. I don't know if you guys could see. I was kind of really just drawn into that scene. What was going on? That was a really long, drawn out scene, and when I thought it was going to stop, it picked back up. So I did like that right there. But what I was going to say to your who said it about the trailer about Pete Davidson? Was it Dom? I think it was.
That was me.
Yeah. So I think in that sense, because it just popped back in my mind, I think people make up their mind because they hate that character, and I'm one of them included. I hate Pete Davidson, so I will not watch anything that he's in. So I think that's just my forte. You know, I don't even know what the movie's about. I think it's actually about his dad and that died in 9/11, right?
Right.
So I shouldn't be judging the movie in that way. I just know I don't like Pete Davidson, so I'm not really going to check it out.
Yeah, well, David, I can already just tell you, I was taking it from the opposite perspective because the film group that I'm in, like, they make their kind of biases towards certain actors and directors very, very well known. Like, they're a very diehard film group, you know, and their whole thing is, again, like, they're going to love this movie, you know, because they're like, oh my God, we love Davidson and we love Judd Apatow. So that's kind of the direction. But, I see your point. I understand where you're coming from.
And see, I kind of pushed all those cons out of my mind, you know, to the side, and was like, oh, okay, Judd Apatow and the story, the subject nature, that pulled me in a little more than him being in the forefront, I guess, is what I was trying to say. Because didn't he come out with a movie maybe like a month ago? I think Elliot reviewed it. Pete Davidson.
Big Time Adolescence.
Big Time Adolescence. Yeah, fun fact, that movie was shot by where I went to school up in Syracuse. That movie, I love that movie.
Yeah, I
was going to say,
I
had no interest in that one, but
it's a good film. It's a good film, honestly, to be honest.
We're now an hour and 37 into this
than,
film, by the way.
A lot better than this one, I'm sure.
Still another hour and 35 minutes to go.
Oh God.
Oh God, don't torture me, man.
Fun fact about Big Time Adolescence. I had one friend who worked wardrobe on that movie. I had another friend who was a background extra in it.
Nice.
Who skateboarded with Griffin Gluck.
Nice.
So that moment where he has his arm around Lando, just, I mean, it feels so forced. And you know, I know I said I like Donald Glover in Lando, and I do. I just don't think. I really think I'm learning. I just don't like what these characters were given and like the story that they were, you know, tasked to tell.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, it didn't feel real, right? Like, what are you thinking, David?
Well, I was going to say that I think that you're not really invested in these scenes because you've already determined in your head that I don't like these characters too much, so it's really sucking me out of the movie. You know, they could put as much glitz and glamour and millions, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars into what I'm seeing right here. But if I'm not invested in the characters or even the writing, then it's already dead to me. I've already made it in my mind what I think of this movie.
Yeah.
And if I can actually bounce off that point further too, like just talking about this scene specifically where him and Kira are arguing about like something, it's like, who cares what they're even arguing about at this point? It kind of goes back to, again, Chris, I hate to do this to you, but something that I found would happen a lot in the later seasons of Lost, which is where coming up with this idea of fake conflict, which is where just generating supposed conflicts out of nothing in order to kind of just further the plot along, when really like there's no reason for it to continue. Like there's no reason for this argument to be happening right now.
As much as I hate to say it, Dom, you're right. I hate that you had to use that as an example to bring it to the forefront.
I had to.
Look, I'm a Lost apologist, okay? It is what it is. I'm a hipster, okay? We established that. I'm a hipster.
Hey, I'm a community apologist. I will love that. I will love that show till the day I die, even with to me, like, Community is the loss of sitcoms, but I'll get to that later on.
But Dom, I got to say, I love that you knew Emilia Clarke's character's name. Like, you're
Kira? Yeah.
I just think it's great that you, I
remember Thandie Newton's character's name when she died. So like somebody reminded me of Rio Durant. Oh, and by the way, Brandon, off the top of my head, Jern Urso, Cassian Andor, Bodhi Rook, Chirrut Imwe, Baze Malbus, and K2SO. I remembered all of those names coming right out of the movie, and I remember all of those names still to this day.
Yeah, so do I, though.
How many characters can you remember? But how many characters can you remember from this movie? Exactly. Like that whole little ragtag group that just showed up that's been plaguing them since this movie first started. I don't remember what they're called. I don't remember a single one of of their names.
Hey, cool costume though. These guys look badass, you know?
Yeah.
Too bad the script sucks and I didn't care at all about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stars Maya Rudolph. It's not her, but it looks like her.
Looks like
her. Oh man. They even got a little person in the back right there, I just noticed.
Yeah, it's Warwick Davis.
That's what
Yep, that was the obligatory Warwick Davis cameo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, is it really? Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Well, I know, I think based on like lore, and again, none of this shit actually matters, but someone said that, you know, like Warwick Davis had a cameo in Phantom Menace and now he has a cameo in here. Apparently they're actually the same character and now he has a different backstory. And, you know, I actually laughed at this part in the theater when he's just like, you know, it's just all these hired guns and hired goons. And then one snap and you're surrounded and he's like, oh crap. Okay. So like, you know, Han Solo hasn't really learned the ropes yet. And it's like, okay, I get that. But yeah, I mean, oh geez, this movie.
I know, right?
It's again, I don't hate it. There are some good parts in it, but I just find that like it got lost in meanders.
It's inconsistent.
You know, it's like
it's the same problem with The Last Jedi. It's an inconsistent movie overall.
Disagree with that.
Okay, why?
God, now you're looking at Reddit.
We'll do another watch next week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say, wait,
that sounds good. We'll have you back on, man.
Consistent or inconsistent?
You're on the Jedi Council. David, that's when all the Jedi come together that are super strong and make decisions for the rest of the Jedi. Yeah.
I think I got that.
Yeah.
And a Jedi is like this thing, kind of like a samurai, but they like meditate, and it's like they're like Western and Eastern philosophy.
I'll have to Google all this afterwards.
I compare them more to a Buddhist than a samurai, only because you don't see any seppuku going on with the Jedi.
That sounds the same.
Brandon, you should do like a Star Wars 101 video and just explain everything, like just how you did that.
Oh yeah.
So it's this thing that looks like
thing that they're going to be speaking on or standing on is called sand, which Anakin Skywalker is not a very big fan of.
Yeah, me
because
neither.
it's coarse and rough.
Good
and
ASMR
it
right
gets
there.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Because it's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
gets everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing much better than me. My voice is still too high pitched somehow.
Yeah, and it's like they're giving me all this information, and it's like, screenplay 101, everything that you need to know about the movie, you should, kind of learn in the first act.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
I
like,
was just going to say, like,
Yep.
what is
To
this
bounce
right
off
now?
of that screenwriting, this is where like you start to get reveals and payoffs to stuff that was set up within the first 3 sequences of your 8 sequence structure. Not like new reveals that allude to greater things that are not going to affect this movie at all.
and she's covering
not
up
like
her like
season
bar
6 of
stand.
Lost, not like season 6 of
Exactly.
Lost where we get a temple out of nowhere. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, I get it. I get the flaws, I love it.
Hey Dom, I know you mentioned earlier in the stream with the kind of the behind the scenes of this film. How much of the original Lord and Miller script was brought into this film in regards to the rewrites?
So there's what I know and there's what I guesswork at, and what I know is literally nothing because nothing has been revealed as to what was actually included. But the reason why I bring up the idea and like why I keep comparing this to Justice League is because with Justice League, and the whole reason why that movie feels like a tonal nightmare is that movie they're literally using bits that Snyder shot with other stuff that Joss Whedon reshot. Like that movie is primarily Snyder's movie, just with a lot cut and recolor graded mixed in with the Joss Whedon reshoots, which are so beyond obvious because those two filmmakers have such drastically different style. But with this movie, say what you will about it, at the very least, it looks and feels consistent throughout the entire way, which is why I'm led to believe that there's not a single bit of the Lord Miller script or anything that they shot in this entire movie. Like they didn't do a Justice League where they were just doing reshoots and pickups and had Joss Whedon finish what Snyder mostly shot. Like they reshot this entire movie. Like Phil Lord and Chris Miller, I don't even think they were like done with like I don't even think they were like midway through. Like they weren't even finished with production before they got let go. Like they reshot this entire movie.
No, because I was just curious. I know Colin Trevorrow got some writing credit for episode 9, and I was just curious.
Right, but that was because they used bits of his script. But like I don't think Lord and Miller are credited on the script at all.
Just curious.
I could have sworn I remember seeing their names in the credits, but I have no idea.
Why I brought it up.
Yeah, we'll see when it happens, but that could also just be like an obligatory writing credit too. Like who knows actually how much of Trevorrow's script ideas were actually used in Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you haven't read the script that leaked online? Or
I listened to bits and pieces. I listened to bits and pieces of it. I didn't get a chance to actually read it yet. I already heard that it's like better than the actual Rise of Skywalker movie though.
Does that take
but
much,
we don't really know that though until we see it on film though. That's
that was like I think
so many people can go like, oh, it's so obvious that this is better, but there's so much like going towards production and then from production towards editing. Like a lot of the film is made on the editing floor, right? Or a lot of the things are there. So
you know what? You're right, because I read the Joker script months before the movie came out, and I thought that script was awesome. And then I watched the movie, I'm like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. That's why, like, I hate.
Wait, you just took me out of the movie. Was that to wake me up? Is that what?
It's like, wait, what? So wait, which part were you confused by?
Because you got my attention.
Joker sucks.
No. Yeah, I caught that last end part.
All right.
We'll have to do a whole talk along after this about that comment.
Yeah,
I think that'll be its own stream.
I don't want to take away from this masterpiece right here. Sorry.
You could also join.
No, dude,
you could also
jump in any point you want. This movie was made to be talked over, man.
Yeah, seriously.
Go for it.
To talk about Joker, you could also jump in Monday, the watch along that we're doing with Elliot and Casual Moviegoer. Like that plug.
Oh, nice.
But hey,
Joker,
you forgot to dab, man.
Yeah, I was just looking at I found an article from Variety talking about the reshoots, and it says that when Howard came on board, it was mandated that 85% of Lord and Miller's Solo be reshot, but 70% of the finished film represents Howard's work.
So yeah, they didn't use a single thing they shot.
Yeah, Mike's saying they got producer credits here in the chat. So
makes sense.
You know what though? I will give Solo credit for this. You know how that the climax of the film is a bunch of double crossings, because that is the whole like smuggler game. And you know what? I think it actually kind of works, but I think it could have been really good if the rest of the film was actually leading up to this. You know, get rid of
I'm actually really happy that you bring that up, because the whole thing that I'm thinking of is when all those double crosses are happening is, you know what I'm thinking of, and bear with me here. I'm thinking of the ending of Community, that episode, Conspiracy Theories and Interior Design, where Annie pulls a gun on Professor, and then the Dean pulls a gun, and then Jeff pulls a gun, and they're just doing plot twist after plot twist after plot twist, and then to the point where the Dean is just like, I don't know, I can't keep track of what's going on, and then Jeff wakes up. That's kind of and again, if Lord and Miller had been able to implement that kind of a style, like that kind of jokey style, but while still maintaining that underlying heart to it in this movie, I feel like that actually kind of would have made this movie really unique and cool.
Yeah, the only real surprise I had was wondering how they got credited, and that was even taken away by the chat. I mean, thanks for sharing that, Mike. But that's just how I was looking forward to, just like the end of this film and the credits, just to like get that piece of knowledge, because I could care less about what we're about to get here in a few minutes. And the big reveal, we all know what's coming, and if you don't know, I won't spoil it. But like, yeah, like what all you guys are saying, like it just wasn't done in a way that like makes you care at all. You know, it's just, I don't know. It was fun hanging out and watching this with you guys, but like as far as a film goes, geez, this thing is like, 3-hole punch gym to bring it back to the office. Just holes all over the place.
I think
I'm right there with you, Brandon. By the way, I've only seen one episode of Community too.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan. I don't know.
Me neither.
You guys are missing out. That for the first 3 seasons, to me, that show was like the best sitcom ever made.
Mike says it's okay, man. I'm just kidding. But dude, you guys gotta check that out with the second eye. It's really worth the watch, especially if you're quarantined and you need something on Netflix. It's came at the perfect time for me.
It really did. And now, because of it, they're talking about making the movie at last. They're fulfilling the prophecy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Well, I don't actually. Chevy Chase is just indifferent. It's indifferent. But yeah, like I think this climax works, but the whole point of a climax is that, the rest of the movie leads up to this. And, just the amount of characters and, the way that they were able to, like, the whole L3 thing doesn't play any factors into this climax whatsoever. So
right, what did he die for?
Exactly. What do you mean? What did she die for? Because remember, Chris, droids have genders now.
Oh yeah, true. That's just how, like, even though I'm rewatching it again, this is like my second time watching it. Like, I just still, it's going over my head, because I'm like, okay, well, here we are. We're in this place now. He's holding a shiny thing. Great. What is it? It's just like, oh man. But this is why I wanted to do a Star Wars month on the channel, because we're pretty strong about how we love Star Wars, but I wanted to also put this movie on to show, like, we got a little unbiased towards the franchise as a whole. There's some good and some bad,
So you guys got really quiet here, so I'm assuming something's coming up. I'm just looking at all your faces, how awkwardly quiet it got.
Up when Woody Harrelson is the traitor. It's like, are we surprised by this in the slightest? This
I kind of like it.
Oh, but no, it's not that it's bad. Like, I'm like, my whole thing is it's supposed to be built up as like this big climactic surprise. Like, again, from a movie standpoint, it's like, oh, this big surprise. But it's like, within the context of the movie, it's like, was anybody surprised by this?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I guess I'm the only one then. It's like, I guessed it from 3 miles away.
I
he walked off screen to me, I'm like, yeah, he's going to portray them. But
I got to agree with Dom, though. I can't pinpoint it, but I've seen this formula done like a billion times.
Sure.
I mean, so I think I understand what he's saying for sure. I mean, me, myself, I didn't pick up on it, but I mean, I've seen it in movies so many times.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by it in theaters, but I certainly was, a little checked out at this point, and just wasn't really excited by it either, And
I mean, hindsight is 20/20 too. So like when you go to like a reveal movie, like it's like, oh, the big reveal, but then when you watch it back, knowing the reveal, you kind of think to yourself, like, how did I not see this?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But if you can see it, I think that's when you either have a script flaw or you're just not invested into the film.
And the whole thing with that is that again, like, and how this has kind of been spoiled just with the idea of the twist is the thing that's ruined that all the movies in the 90s that had such those great twists, like our Usual Suspects, our Fight Clubs, our Sixth Senses, our Mementos, where the whole thing with those twists were so shocking and unexpected that when you went back and watched it a second time, knowing the twist, it made it almost like you were watching a completely different movie, and it just made it a completely new and awesome viewing experience. But because every movie after that tried to do a twist, almost to the point where it became comical and just became like a farce in and of itself. It's just like the idea of a twist just became so far-fetched that now it's like a rarity that we ever get a twist that's actually surprising.
One that I genuinely liked was the one in Spider-Man Homecoming. And I mean, yeah, there's like,
I agree.
Obviously in the 90s when all those like twists were happening, I think it's been long enough that we can bring back twists because that's just assuming that everyone has seen Usual Suspects, Fight Club, and Sixth Sense and all those movies. But, I think we're getting to a new generation now that I think the twist ending it's justified to bring it back if done correctly.
I think there's always room for it. Yeah, I just think you need to, do it in a way. I agree with you, man. I think if done correctly, then there's room for anything, But
we're getting to a point now where like Usual Suspects is getting to like what 25 years old.
Usual Suspects is 25 years old this year.
Right.
I've been trying to spend like a lot more time with my grandparents and whatnot. It's something that they always say when watching a film. Like, there's only so many stories you can tell, and so many different ways they use decorating. Like, as far as like putting the Star Wars skin on it or like the Marvel skin on it. But if it's done the right way, it still will resonate.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, and it's funny, Chris, that you mentioned that. Chris, it's funny that you mentioned that. That's the exact same thing that my film professor, almost all my film professors between Duchess and Oswego have said to me, is that there's only like really 8 or 9 different like types of stories that you can tell. It's how each person puts their unique individual personal spin on it that like actually makes it compelling.
And Star Wars had that for me. It had that charm. It had that little tiny story in a big galaxy feel, that soul that Disney has sucked out of it, and this film almost nearly destroyed, in my opinion. And that's why I think as we're having this conversation, I'm trying to figure out why I feel so not angry, but so that direction about this film, and I think like I'm getting to understand why I feel that way. And it's because like, they're not reinventing the wheel here, but there's not like that same charm, that same George Lucas touch, that love that I grew up loving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Star Wars is every single hero's journey that you've seen in literally almost every single movie ever made. But again, it's the fact that George Lucas is telling the story also of kind of the everyman being part of something bigger. That's that extra layer that makes Star Wars so compelling. Is that fact of is when you watch Luke Skywalker, kind of fulfill his dreams of joining the rebellion. You're kind of seeing this like this simple farm boy, like we're all kind of the idea of living in that small town, but wanting to be part of something bigger and important and actually meaningful. That's something that we can all relate to. Like that's just a basic fundamentally like good storytelling technique. That's that extra layer that makes Star Wars Star Wars.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have the 6 stories here right in front of me if you want to hear them.
Yo, actually I do want to hear them.
Rags to riches, a steady rise from bad to good fortune. Riches to rags, a fall from good to bad, a tragedy. Icarus, a rise, then a fall in fortune. Oh God, I'm going to butcher this. Oedipus.
Oedipus.
Oh, Oedipus. You're right.
A fall, a rise, then a fall again. Cinderella, rise, fall, rise, and then man in a hole, fall, rise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
just all in essence, it's those 6, but it's just, telling them in a clever and unique way and, putting some unique twist on it.
Yeah. 100%, man. And throwing glow sticks around in the middle of a fight scene isn't, in my opinion, isn't a way to do that.
Oh, I didn't mind it. But again, it's only because of characters. It's because, this love story. I mean, they had something going at first, but then we got to introduce Beckett. We got to introduce L3. We got to introduce, so many different things that this doesn't feel that justified. That's just me, of course.
Apparently, L3 was a Lord and Miller carryover.
Oh, really?
Oh, that makes sense.
Does anybody actually care about anything that's happening in this scene? Because again, I literally feel like, wow, I feel like I'm watching a more serious version of the ending of Conspiracy Theories and Interior Design, where it's I have my sword pointed at you. Oh, now you're dead. Oh, now I
don't like this movie, but I like this.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't know, Joe. I think the whole double crossing thing and the fact that we have this with Star Wars is just trying to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And now that we have a climax in bad guy's office, I like the smaller scale of it. You know what I mean?
I'm into it for what it is. Like, I'm not, like it's in the overall Star Wars like mythology and everything. It is not. It's terrible. It's not great.
Yeah.
But in a capsule, I don't think it's a terrible movie.
Yeah, I don't.
Either,
but it's not.
I can forgive it in The Mandalorian because that is truly showing it's first of all, it's a television show. It's a different medium. It's being presented in a different way. I have my gripes with The Mandalorian, but where I can forgive it is like the small scale, the small feel is justified. But like this hit the big screen. This was for all intents and purposes supposed to be another Star Wars banger in like the Disney run, and it fell short for me in regards to that.
Was it supposed to be like a banger, or was it supposed to be
a major
To me, certainly going into this, I was still in good faith and feeling positive about it.
Yeah, and even just taking all that aside, but forget your own subjective taste of a banner. This is a movie, like you go into a movie with certain expectations. You don't go into a movie expecting to see like a television. Like that to me is why most television movies are like big screen versions of like long running shows that you've seen on the air. Like don't necessarily work. Like me, for as much as I'm looking forward to that Sopranos movie, The Many Saints of Newark, there's still a part of me that is thinking like, why is this not premiering on HBO Max? Like this would be so much more better suited as like a television movie.
Yeah, I agree, Dom. I couldn't agree more.
Like there's a reason why, like, again, and I talked about this too, is like, as far as the medium of television has become, okay, here we go. As far as the medium of television has come in terms of the amount of storytelling and the risks that it'll take, there is still something to enjoy about episodic storytelling that just like, in a way, doesn't necessarily work for the big screen. Now, this is funny. So again, kind of to jump points, cameo, like hit or miss, because again, like for me at least, and again, the whole thing is, again, going back to the Clone Wars and how the Clone Wars ends up saving this. But again, that also factors into Brandon's argument, which is where the Clone Wars makes us understand the point of this. But for just as a movie, this makes no
terrible
sense.
So not
at all.
Not having seen Clone Wars and having loved this character in Phantom Menace, I was very happy to see it.
Yeah.
But afterwards, it still to this day, I'm like, how in the hell? What does that mean? And so I went into it with a little less information. So I get that. I mean,
I hate this so much.
You know what, Brandon, you were right.
First of all,
I love Star Wars so much that I read the extended universe comics and I read everything, and I read the Son of Dathomir run, and I think you can't let that dictate how poor of a scene this is right now.
Yeah. First of all, why were holograms red?
Yeah,
ever.
Right. When can you see color in holograms?
Bring up the double lightsaber. Why does he do that? Because he's Darth Maul and he's a double lightsaber. You remember the Phantom Menace, right? Also, if this is your first time watching Star Wars ever, and you just see this dude with a bunch of red makeup on, someone's gonna go, "Who's that? What?
Yeah.
Who?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on here?" It has
guys.
Darth Maul
These are Disney movies, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is
like a bird today.
Once again,
we can't help ourselves.
They have to do these callbacks, or else people, aren't going to explore the older movies. I mean, that's just kind of what it is. It's just,
However, I'm going to say that Darth Maul has no business being in a Han Solo movie because he was never mentioned. He's never vital to this particular story. And I'm not talking from a Star Wars standpoint. I'm talking from a movie standpoint. Right?
Yeah.
So now we've introduced something brand new with like 15 minutes left.
It was a setup for another that never happened.
That is the first thing I'll admit. That's the one point I'm like, okay, that is a setup for another movie. And of course, we have to have the obligatory trying to, again, correct for Lucas's biggest mistake to me with the special editions, the Han shot first.
Yeah.
Easily to me, like I think we can all agree that is the worst decision that Lucas ever made when it came to those special editions. I will forgive every other change he made, but that one, it's like, that edit where like he adjusts his head to the side, and it serves no purpose.
Yeah, I still have the original VHSs, and thank God, because I
have
the magic
the original
I grew up
version,
on. So
like still.
Yeah. But Elliot, dude, you've been a little quiet for a little while, man. Where's your head at, dude? This is hard to take in. How you feeling right now, man?
No, I'm taking it all in, and I'm listening to you guys' opinion, and still watching the movie, because this is only probably my probably third time seeing this film from the first time in the theater, and then buying it on Blu-ray or whatnot. But no, I'm just I'm just looking at where obviously where the film went wrong and the possibility still there, because again, as you guys had mentioned earlier in the stream, how Clone Wars made the prequels a little bit more stand on its 2 feet a little bit higher. So I'm just looking at, again, as I think someone Mike brought it up earlier, as a Disney Plus series, I think there's these characters, Kira and some of these other little seeds that they plant in here still has a possibility of maybe you see it in a show and then it makes more sense and it kind of helps this movie out a little bit. And I think that's where Disney's kind of doing, with some of the Marvel stuff. We're getting some of these smaller characters getting their own shows. So it makes you maybe appreciate them when you watch them in an older movie, or appreciate them when you see them in the future movies. So I'm just looking at it all from a big picture standpoint, and just seeing where the where the future can head with this franchise that we all love.
Yeah, definitely. And Mike in the comments actually brought up a really interesting point, which where just this movie would have worked better as a Disney Plus show. And honestly, after going through and just the amount of stuff, and also kind of seeing how it does try to tie into some of the greater expanded things. The cool thing about The Mandalorian, besides its more episodic elements, kind of the smaller scale element kind of helping to really serve, I think, what they were trying to do with these movies, both with Rogue One and this movie, trying to tell these smaller scale stories about the little guys within the Star Wars. I think the problem is that most people's expectations about the Star Wars movies come from, okay, we're expecting these grandiose stories because of these expectations we have in our heads with Star Wars, which is why these movies about the little guys don't work. But it's a Disney Plus show, you don't have those expectations. And so with what they've done, and Chris, this is also something that you and I talked about on our Clone Wars episode, what they've done with the little characters, with Ahsoka Tano, with Rex, with Darth Maul, in between both the Clone Wars and Rebels, and making them like some of the most iconic Star Wars characters now ever, and kind of tying them in and telling those kind of grand scale stories on a small scale. It almost might have benefited this movie, especially with how they were clearly trying to tie it in with those animated shows, much more so than anything in the live action. I think it would have benefited this movie if it were like a Disney Plus show.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
I totally agree with that. I 100% agree. I think if this was something, or if Disney Plus was around at the time that this came out, this would have been received very differently and probably handled very differently. And I don't think that we'll see something like this happen again. So I think this walked so all the others could run on Disney Plus.
I think this is unfortunately for Disney that this was just kind of an experiment for them in regards to see where the audience was. And I think if that Boba Fett movie would have came, like if that movie from Josh Trank would have had the, if it would have worked, I think that film would have replaced that one. Saying I think this would have been served better as a Disney Plus show, just like we're getting we'll see what happens with Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I think that this would have been a perfect launching for Disney Plus. And then, like I said, maybe that Boba Fett would have been what the experimental film, if you want to call it that, besides Rogue One, to see where audiences were, to see if they were accepting something like this.
And the Obi-Wan point is a great point. It was, the rumor was that it was going to be a movie, and now they're making it into a series, which probably will fit it better.
Right.
And I'm right there with you guys, because like I said, it's not that I feel something from these characters. I just feel that they're very directionless, and that shows to me as a viewer. I think, if you want to show these smaller scale stories, take a page out of the Mandalorian's book, but just do a better job than the Mandalorian, in my opinion.
Hey,
I had to, Dom. I see you shaking your head. I had to.
Chris doesn't like the Mandalorian, in case you guys couldn't pick up on that.
Not the biggest fan, no. But I'm willing to see where it goes, like we came to the conclusion of on our episode. I always like to keep an open mind, but
if there's one thing we've learned to do, it's give Filoni the benefit of the doubt after an okay first season, because I think that has both benefited us greatly with both Clone Wars and Rebels now.
110%, yeah.
Hey, Dom, did you notice in that last scene when you were talking about little characters and little guy, every single time you said that, it showed Warwick Davis on the screen.
Okay, trust me, that was
boom,
not
boom, boom.
my part. That was not
no, you nailed it perfectly, and I applaud you. It was beautiful.
I have nothing against dwarves. I have nothing against little people. I think that Peter Dinklage is one of our national treasures. I love Warwick, especially.
No, I'm just saying your timing was impeccable.
I know. What can I say? I'm good. I'm good with my timing.
You guys are killing me with the chat, but honestly, why does he have an Hawaiian shirt on? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is going on in this film right now?
Swag, really weird.
I think this was a reshoot when he was making his new album, and they probably just didn't come on set.
They pulled him from the Sony Records lot. They're like, come on, we need you for
a
second.
I'll show up, but I'm not going to like it.
It's like,
I'm not changing. Oh,
God. He was in the middle of writing Redbone during this moment.
Right?
Look, I want that shirt. That's a dope shirt. I just don't know why it's in Star Wars. You know.
See, like this is obvious like sequel bait. Which, you know, like I'm sure that's what they were planning on doing, was gonna go like a bunch of solo adventures, which now obviously the Mandalorian wasn't out back then, but just from a fan's perspective, I think, you know, having a solo TV series, you know, it could have worked. Again, we won't know until we see it, but who knows? Maybe we would have had a solo Mandalorian crossover. Also, I have those dice in my car.
Nice.
Yeah, and there it is.
All right.
Okay.
Written by John and Lawrence Kasdan. Yeah. Okay. So no credit for Phil Lord and Miller. So it was only for the Kasdans, father and son duo.
Executive producers.
Well,
there it is. Producing credits. Yeah. Okay. There they are. They're credited with producing, but we all know kind of the tale of the executive producer. It was just a pointless credit.
Well, to everyone in chat, you know, thanks for watching along with us. We're going to discuss here for a few minutes if you want to stick around and stay in the conversation. But it was great watching this film with all you guys. So now, I mean, now that it's over, you know, like what does everyone think? You know, Solo, a Star Wars story.
I got my thoughts, but I'm going to go last because I want to hear everyone else's first.
I'll just jump in because it's short and sweet. I think this should have just been called Solo, no Star Wars story. It was a totally separate. I didn't get any real Star Wars feel other than some of the characters that I knew, like in the background and whatnot, just the way everything looked with the droids and stuff like that. So seeing it from the outside looking in, I thought this was an okay. I wouldn't give it that 70% that Rotten Tomatoes is giving it or whatever. I would give it probably about a 55-60%. It was okay. I think I had fun with the parts that were supposed to be fun, but it just drug on, and then that whole dragged on. But you know, but that whole ending was just very cliche. The love interest involved, I wasn't buying it whatsoever, and it just didn't have too many characters that you fell in. I don't think I liked any one character. Like I said, Chewbacca. That was it.
Yeah, Elliot, man, what's your now that we're in the you know, the end of the movie here?
No, I mean, like I said,
end
game here. Yeah, I mean, this is, like I said, my third time probably watching this film, and it isn't something I, as I said, this is my third time watching it. It's been out for 2 years. You know, I like to, you know, when I love a movie, I rewatch it as much as possible. So, I mean, it's just like, I think Joe even said it, you know, for what it is in the vacuum in regards to just, you know, what I feel about this film. I like it for what it is, but am I going to watch it every other, you know, when we get another Star Wars film, I'm going to put that in the, you know, rewatch along in regards to watching all 11 films in the franchise. And, you know, it's probably, like I said, lower tier, but for what it is, you know, it is a Star Wars film with some introducing some new characters, some old characters that we love, come to love. It's fine for what it is, in my opinion. Like I said, I think even Brandon said it's not a terrible movie, but when you, again, we were talking about this last night with Iron Man 2, in regards to when you look at 23 films and when people say from their best to their worst, is it like a terrible, horrible film that didn't, you know, that is like the worst film you've ever seen? No. But when you look at it from the grand scheme of a franchise standpoint, it has its, you know, its flaws compared to the more top tier films.
Yeah, I think so too. It all depends on, like, when you look at a movie as just a movie as opposed to looking at it in part of a franchise. Through my eyes, seeing this as a Star Wars film, like compared to the OG trilogy, like, this is terrible, right? But as a movie on its own, you know, like, how are the characters? They're okay. How's the story? A little clunky, but it has some good parts, I guess. How's the emotional impact? Not really, non-existent, really. How are the action scenes? Well, they look kind of cool, but then again, the cinematography, you can't really see what's happening. That color palette is just disgusting. Like, I'm squinting to see what's going on screen, which is the problem. The comedy didn't really land. Everything was just so mediocre that I think just, you know, watching it again, it was always a film that when you watch it for the first time, it's like, oh God. Then you watch it again. This is actually kind of better than I remember it to be. You watch it again, it goes boom, and it just kind of meanders like the story. So it's such a middle of the road movie that it's almost like you don't really feel anything from it. Void, lifeless. Yeah, that's Solo.
It's an HBO movie. It's a movie that you would see, like, you know, HBO run over and over and over again until you're tired of it, but you'll put it on because it's on. You know, it's I've kind of said what I think of it. It's a solid movie. I agree with Elliot. Not solid movie. It's a good watch. for what it is. But it doesn't do anything to advance my interest in Star Wars or anything like that. It's and I can forget all of the characters in an instant. So
yeah. If I'm just jumping into my thoughts on it real quick, if I can give like a quick summation again, like Joe, you hit the nail on the head. It's an HBO movie. Like to me, the difference between this and Rogue One is a movie. This is like a 5-episode miniseries crammed into a movie. It's very episodic, but yes, it's every single point I feel like is like an episode, like the fight on the gas planet in the beginning when he meets up with Becca. That's an episode in and of itself. The train heist, that's an episode in and of itself. Like all of this were literally like episodes within a miniseries that felt clustered into a movie. And now I feel like that's something I couldn't really figure out the first time I watched it in theaters. And now having rewatched it, I'm fully of the opinion. I think the actors are doing a fine enough job, with the exception of Donald Glover. But again, it's like to me, they're not really adding anything interesting and really particularly new. Again, like the most compelling character in this movie to me is Chewbacca and his dynamic with Han. But I also wanted to bounce off your point, Chris, earlier, which is this feels like an Elseworlds thing. Like this, I'm looking at that. I'm like, yeah, it's not that Alden Ehrenreich's doing a bad job, but he's not playing Han Solo. Like I don't believe for a second that I'm watching Han Solo. Yeah, I believe that this is like a random one-off adventure in the Star Wars verse, and I think I'm watching like a Lando like wannabe cosplayer. But like this is like, this is not Han Solo. And so, but as for the movie itself, again, it's a clustered miniseries, and it's just entertaining enough to keep my attention. So, and it's certainly not the worst thing I've seen at all. But to me, it's a 3-star movie.
Yeah, I'm certainly glad I watched it again with you guys because, I enjoy you guys' company, and I think everyone had a lot of good stuff to say, and this was a fun watch along. But as far as like a film goes, I'm never putting this one on again by myself. If I'm hanging out with someone and they're like, "Hey, let's watch Solo," and I can't change their mind, I'm leaving. No. It's really like that. It's really like that. It doesn't just let me down on a personal level. It lets me down on a critical level as well. And I always try and take something good from anything because I've been trying to become a musician by trade for 15 years now. I know it is hard to make a career off of being a creator, so I hate just to, like that's someone's baby. But it really just does not speak to me.
Look how many jobs it provid for all these people. If you're still watching the credits, look at how many jobs it provided.
Exactly.
How much money goes into making these movies. Like how many hours goes into making a movie. And I forget who it was, but there was always a critic that after every single movie he would clap just because, getting a film made is a ton of work. It's a ton of work. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. You nailed it on the head, Chris.
Yeah. Like, look, I respect the hustle, but it just didn't resonate with me. Now, while I still have you guys, how do we feel about the future of Star Wars, right? They were doing that one movie every year, and that kind of didn't go so well for them. I know The Mandalorian was a big hit, and Clone Wars was a big hit for those who watched it, but like to me personally, it still feels like it's a little up in the air, Like, so how's everyone feeling about the galaxy far, far away going into this new decade?
I need a break.
Yeah. Nothing is getting that because everything's shut down, but...
And I love Star Wars, but god damn it, I need a break. But you know what? I think they have something going with The Mandalorian. I think Disney Plus is going to be a good way so that they can expand the stories on the screen. But in terms of movies, I think going back like 1,000 years, but just wait. And if you're going to do a trilogy, plan it out first.
100%. Yeah.
And you think that wouldn't be the hardest thing to figure out, right?
Gee, like you have to mentally prepare what you're going to say before you go into an interview, let alone make 3 Star Wars films.
Yeah.
Plan it out like extensively, and don't worry about releasing it soon so we have that Star Wars kick. Star Wars has been around forever. Just take your time. If you're going to do it, take your time. I need a break.
Yeah, it was them trying to implement. This is a conclusion we all came to, but it was them attempting to implement their own version of the Marvel strategy, and it just did not work because, unlike trying to come up with a new thing, Star Wars is very much rooted in what works, at least for the movies. Like you have the expanded stuff on the side because by that point you had Clone Wars, you had Rebels, but Star Wars as movies is the trilogy, and that is that. And I enjoyed these movies for what they are, but at the end of the day, that's what works for them. And if they wanted to take this approach to me, they didn't do it the right way.
Yeah, Elliot, David, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, you know, when we did our going back to just the wonderful content we've all been a part of so far, which is these watch-alongs and collaborations. You know, going back to Marvel, as you know, Dom was just saying, you know, it's Disney, so they saw like, hey, we're already doing this. Let's try to, you know, do this with this franchise, and it's just something that, you know, we're living in a bubble now in regards to, you know, where we are in our lives. You know, this is a franchise that started in 77, and there's really not another franchise that has held that type of power and that type of, you know, that long stand in the decade, other than, you know, James Bond and what have you. But it's a lot of stuff going on with this franchise, right? I mean, again, I can't think of another movie or a franchise of this nature that tried to do a prequel with these so beloved characters. So it is a trial and error thing. And I think Joe even said so much so that we'll probably never, I won't say never, but it'll be a while before we see another kind of experimental process with this particular franchise. Again, back in 2012 when Disney acquired them, or was it 2011 or so?
2012.
2012. So 3 years later, we announced we're going to do this new slate of films. We're going to bring back the Star Wars saga. Again, in the same way I look at Marvel, we've never seen this before. I think it's the same thing with Star Wars. So I think when we look back at this 20, 30 years from now, seeing where they are then, we can always look back at, you know, their failures, their heights, their lows. So I think it's just, again, living in the moment. It wasn't a successful film. We're going back to Solo, but just in regards to the future, as you all have mentioned, The Mandalorian seems to have, for the most part, this is the most like positive thing since, I would say, probably Force Awakens. And I would say Rogue One, to an extent, it made $1 billion. And I think it had mostly good praise, but I would definitely say Force Awakens and then Mandalorian has been like the most positive thing that I can think of. I don't know if you guys agree with me in regards to just this new slate of Star Wars films and shows. So with the future, I think it's bright. Again, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, all the people that I know can bring the things that we love. And I think we always have to remember, too, the generation that's below us, you know, they might love Solo. They might love Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. So it's that generation that they're, and I think David even said it so much so, and we've said it in the beginning, Star Wars was initially created for kids. So, you know, we have our, you know, preconceived notions with the franchise, where we want to see things to go, but Disney's thinking about, you know, that 15-year-old that was once 5 when they saw, Phantom Menace. So it's a different mindset. It's a, you know, we would never know what the conversations are with Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy, but it's a bigger conversation than what we're having now. But I think the future's bright for Star Wars.
Yeah, I'll totally agree with that.
Yeah, it's going to still be around when we're dead. So
that is true.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think what you're seeing with The Mandalorian is kind of an example of what we've all been saying, is wanting to see something different and wanting to see where they'll take it when it's not the same old story. So I'm hoping that kind of is that points them in the right direction. But at the same time, I think, you know, it is owned by Disney. And so we know what we're going to get. We know that it's going to be hammered over our heads because it was acquired to make money, and you don't make money unless you're pumping out content. So we're going to see movies, we're going to see toys, we're going to see some ridiculous characters and some ridiculous things added into these movies that are forgettable because it is all about the product that comes out of it and can be sold in Target stores or wherever. So I think we're going to see a movie sooner rather than later. I'm excited with some of the involvement that we're seeing. Taika Waititi being involved is really exciting to me. And you know, we'll see where things go. I would love to see them playing around with. I know Knights of the Old Republic has been talked about a lot. I would love to see that played around with. What that looks like, I couldn't tell you, but you know, we shall see.
Yeah, totally.
David, you know, you're a bit new to this realm. What do you see for the future of Star Wars? How do you feel about it? Where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, just off the top, I mean, I got to agree with Dom as far as just what I know. The trilogy is what's always talked about, is that's going to be the forever trilogy, right? I remember seeing episode 1. I don't remember anything about it too much, obviously. You know, I mean, it didn't really resonate with me, these movies, when they came out. They came out early 2000s and whatnot. These were movies that were made for that time era. They don't really hold too much weight in my mind, at least. I mean, you know, they criticize a lot. You know, you got the Jar Jar Binks character. You got a lot of stuff that looked dated and whatnot, and I guess convoluted storyline. I don't really know too much. But I gotta disagree in the sense, even though we are getting Taika, you know, attached to another Star Wars movie, I don't see them putting out as many as they tried to in like the last maybe decade, I guess, or 8 years. I think they're going to try to focus more on the shows, on the streaming shows, The Mandalorian. And it's so funny that out here by Disneyland that they're barely incorporating that whole Star Wars world. They barely brought that out last year. You guys know that, right? So it's like them. I believe it was last year, a year and a half ago, something like that. But it's like that was such a missed opportunity. They could have put out like 5 years ago. And then now they're, I guess, going to be putting out, I think it's in Disneyland Orlando, the Avengers world or something like that, or something with Avengers, right?
In California too. It was supposed to come out in June.
Oh, is it? Yeah. See, so it's like these movies are done. Why are you guys barely putting this out now? But I agree what Joe said about the whole, they're going to keep coming out with a slew of, Baby Yoda and all these little characters that make them money. It's all about money. But I think it's a little bit, too little, too late. And as far as the moviegoer goes, but I think everything's going to translate to TV as far as like Mandalorian and what sub shows. And this did, now that I think about it, this movie did feel like something that you would see on a Disney Plus or even like HBO or something like you had said.
One other thing I just point out real quick though is when we're talking about the number of movies that they've released over the past few years, in comparison to like a Marvel, it doesn't hold any weight there. I mean, you have 5 movies compared to Marvel releasing 3 or 4 a year. I do think that they're going to ramp back up to something like that. Not 3 or 4, but I do think that we'll start seeing like a more aggressive schedule down the road once they get a good track of where they're going. Yeah. And I do think that's going to potentially have some Kevin Feige bleed over there too.
Yeah. But you need that one movie that's a hit first.
I think, exactly. I think, I'm sorry, Brandon, but I think we're all agreeing. And I totally agree. I think that like we were saying on the Endgame watch along a few weekends back now, because you're right, like this is the same company that owns them. They're totally capable of pumping out, what is Marvel, up to 3 films a year now? I mean, taking COVID out of the situation.
But they said they were gonna. They said they were gonna backtrack on that at least for like the next couple of years going forward. But clearly now COVID has introduced a whole different thing now. Right. So,
but I mean, they're still pumping out such a high volume of these films, and the thing is, they all do relatively well. Even like we were saying, whenever that I think it was last night, me, David, and Elliot, we were saying like, oh, that film only made 400 million. Like that's still a crazy amount. Even the ones that like the Dark Worlds of the world, the ones that don't do as good, they still make boatloads of money. And I think it's because there's a strong and powerful through line. We need a clear creative direction. So to bring it back to the top of this whole watch along, so someone had posted a comment, and I do think we need like a Filoni. We need someone at least who cares about the source material, who understands the source material, who's well read and well versed in the subject matter. Because just like comics, Star Wars has a lot that is in written text that hasn't been translated to film that's still in game. We need someone with the grasp. We need someone with an understanding. We need someone who cares and someone who is focused. We can't have this like passing the torch off and then there's a dispute between director 1 and director 2. And then when director 1 comes back on the final movie, it's all messy and he's trying his best to fix it. We can't have that, because I was fine not getting Star Wars films. Before I knew Disney was going to get it, I would just go back to what I had, and it was great and it was powerful and it resonated with me. And so they're almost detracting from what I grew up loving. They are detracting, in my opinion, from what I grew up loving. And I think that's part of why I get so fired up about it and why I wanted to watch Solo. So long-winded way to say we need someone who cares and we need a strong through line.
Yeah, it all goes back to the age-old argument of movies are made by people, not what's it called? Not what was it? Not by committees. Too many cooks in the kitchen. That whole little adage that everybody loved to say when they were talking about the early days of DC. And there is a lot of merit to that. Like the power of even stuff like you look at a lot of the stuff outside the movies. You look at the Clone Wars. You look at Rebels. You look at even with the Mandalorian. Again, that's it. Baby phases right now, so you can't really say anything yet. But again, it comes down to the idea of ultimately when there's somebody behind a project. Doesn't matter if it's a series of films, one film, television series. What's it called? An entire cinematic universe, the way the MCU does. And what works is when you get not necessarily one person, but one person who understands and has the creative passion in order to be able to pick the people that he knows are going to be able to bring that vision to life in the best way possible. That is how every film is made. That to me is how the best films are made. And it also helps to give us some of the best stories. And ultimately and it just proves that Kathleen Kennedy was just not the person to do that, because Kathleen Kennedy, she knows how to make movies and get them done on a tight production, but with having kind of the creative flexibility and mindset that Kevin Feige brought that helped make that those Marvel movies so special. Just the idea that you could have 20 films in a series and have them all flow and connect like they feel like they have a beginning, middle, and end is unprecedented. And it takes somebody with that level of creativity and love that just was missing from all these other copycats that you saw trying to mimic Marvel. It's what was missing from Star Wars, it was missing from DC, it was missing from the Dark Universe, if you want to credit that, because it didn't even get off the ground before it got a chance to actually become its own thing. But yeah, and that I think is agree with kind of what all of you guys are saying going forward, is that's what Star Wars needs, whether that's going to be Favreau, whether it's going to be Filoni, whether it's going to be somebody else, regardless of what the future of Star Wars holds, whether it is in movies, whether it is in TV, whether it is in some mix of the two. Once we get past this whole COVID crisis, that is ultimately what Star Wars needs. And Kennedy just showed with these last movies under her reign that she was not the person to do that.
Just curious thought. Just want to get you guys' thoughts on going back to George Lucas, the original franchise. Obviously, 2 directors. Some people think that he, directed the 3rd one, and then going to the prequels. So, if George Lucas was still owning and still had creative rights of Star Wars with this new trilogy, and going back to the person that loved Star Wars, created Star Wars, and we got the prequels. Going back to the conversation we had about Kathleen Kennedy, and just playing devil's advocate, and just the whole idea of someone that loves the franchise, knows everything about it, is going to bring you great quality. Because I go back to, again, the prequels aren't as strong as the original franchise. So I'm just kind of worried on where you guys are at in regards to, if they do bring in someone that's not a diehard Star Wars fan, is it possible that they can still bring us great Star Wars content?
Yes, but it depends on the people who, like George Lucas. When he was making Star Wars, he was a nobody, right? And you see, like, Han Solo was supposed to be some green guy with gills, and like one of the earlier versions of the script, everyone was going to be like little people, right? And a lot of what happened with Star Wars, like the rough cut was terrible, and then the editor had to come in and go, George, come on, man, you got it. Like, a lot of people were able to challenge him. With the prequels, he's the guy who made Star Wars. Are you going to challenge George Lucas? Not a chance. And he had complete creative control. And then we got the prequels. So I think it's, yeah, sure, getting someone who is passionate about it, but also having that person, being able to be challenged as well. So again, it's just don't have too many voices.
And that was the only reason I brought that up, is because, again, we all know that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have a passion for the franchise, but then assuming that they're just going to be a perfect fit in Kathleen Kennedy's role is not a guarantee.
Yeah, and with Kathleen Kennedy too, it's like you can love the films, you can hate the films, whatever the case may be. The whole Taika Waititi news, Kathleen Kennedy wasn't mentioned once, right? And I think with Disney looking at this, they look online and you see Star Wars and people are loving it, people are hating it, and they see like they're not idiots, right? So they see the Twitter bashing back and forth, and they're going, "Oh boy, like I think Star Wars might be in a worse place than we found it in terms of the fandom." So maybe and now people are getting so into this Mandalorian thing that I think Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are going to be the 2, keepers of the flame, so to speak, just because, a lot of people are, there's more positive feedback on the Mandalorian than negative feedback.
Yeah, I really hope they are, especially with, I always get my Favreau Filoni's confused, but whoever was like the main force behind the Clone Wars, proven that he could direct live action.
Yep.
Yeah, who is it now?
Well, in that case, it's tricky because the whole thing is Filoni was not the creative head behind Mandalorian the way he was with Clone Wars and Rebels. He was much more so a thing of where him and Favreau, that was kind of an even split. But if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember who it was that specifically pitched the idea, so I don't know whose baby it is originally. I believe the creative control belongs to respectively to both of them. But I think it's Favreau that's running most of the producer credits, and I know he wrote most of the episodes versus Filoni directed. Filoni himself, like, even admitted this in interviews, was directing. He was learning a lot by taking the directing chair and directed 2 of the episodes, the premiere and the pilot and episode 6. I thought
that was Favreau's baby, was the Mandalorian.
Right, that's what I mean. I don't know actually how. Right, that's what I mean. I don't know actually how much conceptual role Filoni had in the creation of this show.
Right. I'll have to watch. I'll have to watch that gallery they just put out. I'm sure that comes it up.
Watch that
but
too,
But I mean, so it seems like, they're a team, because we can't put a pin on who exactly is the main, person carrying the weight. And I think that's what you need for like we were speaking about the backlash that this Star Wars fandom gives when something doesn't go our way. You need a team effort here to fix this shit, because I'm right there with you, Brandon. I think that Star Wars is in a much worse place than when Disney found it. Doesn't matter how much money you made,
Yeah, I mean, like, sorry, I accidentally muted my microphone. Yeah, like, it's just, you gotta realize that you gotta stay truthful to the fans. And then that brings up that question from before: is the worst thing that ever happened to Star Wars fans? I don't know, but I for someone who loves Star Wars, I just need a break. And the fact that, someone actually messaged me after Rise of Skywalker came out, and they messaged me and going, "Oh, are you going to put up your review?" And I said, "Yeah, for sure." "Are you going to put up yours?" Because he had an Instagram account, and he's like a younger kid, 15, 14 years old. And he goes, "Well, yeah, I like Star Wars, but I'm a little afraid to put it out there because I want my page to be a space of positivity and a safe space. And, I can't handle anyone like you just being all aggressive and stuff." And I'm like, that's pretty telling. Right? Like, think about that. Someone is afraid to talk about something that they love because of just the toxic nature of what it's become. And I think Disney sees that. So, and I told him just to put it out there and just to, stick by it. And he did. And I'm proud of him for that. So, but even still, like, the fact that even was a concern in the first place, it's telling.
And if Disney sees that, I think that's the most positive thing we can take from this, is hopefully they just will do something with it.
Yeah. I'm hearing all you guys, man. I agree. Dom, are we feeling like closing thoughts, or do you have like one more point you want to throw in there?
That you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I was about to say, I'm like, closing remarks, and then let's wrap it up. So I'm thinking just like go once around, like give kind of, like I said before, give like your closing thoughts kind of like on the future of Star Wars, I guess, and kind of like how that ties up with this movie, and then wrap it up, and then end your thoughts with your individual thoughts, and that way we'll just be able to bring it back to me, and Chris will end this thing. So I'm just going to do eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's go. David, you go first, and then go from there.
Okay, so what was it? Closing thoughts on Solo?
Yeah, closing thoughts on Solo, then tell everyone where they can find you, keep up to date with everything you do over on Flix Talk,
Perfect. So I thought this movie was okay. I mean, it wasn't as bad as I think all you guys said. You guys were kind of like scaring me a little bit more, but I thought it was okay. I mean, I survived through it. It was a couple times I walked out for a pee break and almost stayed outside and was going to text you guys saying, "Hey, I ain't coming back." No, but it wasn't that bad. So I thought it was okay. If I had to give it a score out of for doing like a live review, I guess I'd probably give it a 2.5 out of 5. There was a lot of things that did wow me, but the storyline and the character development just did not hold me. And the payoff in the end was not that great. And they left off on a sequel that we probably will never get, just based off of sales and stuff. And you guys can always check me out. Hopefully I'm down in the description below, but if not, my Instagram is at Flix Talk Podcast, FLIX Talk Podcast. I'm sorry, that's my Twitter. My Instagram is just at Flix Talk. See, I'm all over the place. And you guys can search me at Flix Talk on YouTube, guys. I do movie reviews, watch-alongs. I do vlogs where like I go out and I can't do it anymore, but go out and I go Blu-ray hunting. And I'm a collector of movies, good movies. And if you guys like me, check out my channel. Appreciate it.
Definitely do that. And David, thank you again for joining us, man. And we're glad to have you as a friend of the channel, and just a friend, and just a friend in general, man. Now Brando Calrissian, dude, closing thoughts on the film, Star Wars as a whole, and where can the people find you?
Yeah, I mean, and again, like I said before, I'm a Star Wars diehard, but I need a break. Solo, I just found it to be like you go down every single part of the filmmaking process and you just put okay next to it, and that's the review. It's just okay. So for a rating out of 5, I guess I'd go 2. 2 out of 5. I don't hate this movie. But again, I can't really find a reason to really watch it again unless I'm doing a Star Wars marathon. And even then, I might just skip it. But either way, a bit about myself. You can find me at Brando Critic on YouTube and on Instagram. During this whole quarantine thing, you're going to be finding a lot more movie reviews of classic movies, movies that I think maybe need a bit more recognition. But other than that, when this COVID thing ends, you'll see reactions to things, ranking videos for certain certain franchises, which I have quite a few in the works, maybe like Jurassic Park and Pirates of the Caribbean and The Matrix and Lethal Weapon. So those are the projects that are going on right now. And then obviously when this COVID thing is over, I've just started to do more of a Blu-ray hunting kind of thing. And because I go through flea markets and I try to find as many movies on the cheap. So you can find those on my channel. And yeah, find me on Instagram also at Brando Critic.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely go check him out, guys. He's doing a really cool each breakdown of every episode of the Clone Wars series as you're watching it, and I've been enjoying that. Sure. So to keep it on Star Wars. But our newest friend, Joe, Guy at the Movies, thank you for being here, man. You know, it was a pleasure, and you're always welcome back, dude. So what are your final thoughts on Star Wars? Where can the people find you and keep up to date with all that you do?
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. As I've said, I think I'm just ready for something new. They've really touched on, every corner of the same old story over and over again. And it's time to really explore some new avenues and tell some stories that I think a lot of us have been wanting, whether that's from the video games or pulling out some corners of the books that have been out there. And there's a lot of material to sift through. So let's figure out how to get that to the screen. But in terms of where you can find me, my main account is Guy at the Movies on Instagram. You can search Guy at the Movies on YouTube. That is just really getting going. Guy at the Movies 1 on Twitter. And one of the neat things that I think is neat, and Brandon and Elliot on here have been a part of it. Flix Talk is coming up next. And maybe we'll get the other guys on here, is Quarantine Conversations, just half-hour chats, just talking about movies, talking about what got people started on their accounts. And yeah, it's a fun time. So anything we can do to pass the time during this weird time that we're in.
Definitely, man. Definitely. And, last but certainly not least, Elliot of the Mighty Movie Files, man. What's your thoughts on everything and where can the people find you?
Yeah, like I said up top, man, I'm a Disney shill, so this is a masterpiece. I don't know what film you guys have watched. It's just amazing. No, but just going back to what I was saying earlier, could have been better? Yeah, you can say that about any film. Could have been worse, definitely. Like Brandon said, I think this film is fine for what it is. We talked about it with MCU. Iron Man 3 is a really solid Shane Black film, but not a great MCU film, in my opinion. I think that same can go with Solo. It was an experimental film. Like Dom said, this is kind of the Justice League of a Star Wars film with multiple directors, or two different directors, and everything that went on behind the scenes, which is another conversation for another day in regards to if we didn't know the stuff behind the scenes, will we go into the film a little bit differently, but we live in a time now where we know everything about movies. So at the end of the day, I think when I first saw it 2 years ago, I gave it like a 3.5. I'll give it a 3 now. Again, I think it's just fine for what it is, but like Brandon said, this isn't something I'm biting at the bits to watch in regards to when Star Wars films come out and doing like a marathon. So 3 out of 5 for me for Solo Star Wars story. So besides that, you guys can find me on my YouTube channel. I post pretty frequently regarding Netflix films, Hulu films, TV shows as well, and very similar to what Brandon's been doing during this quarantine. I've been doing a series called Movies That I Missed last year, and that's essentially just a series of films that not necessarily the big blockbuster films, but smaller films, like a Color Out of Space, or recently watched Monos for the first time, which I thought was fantastic. I watched, Waves, and I'm watching Loose. So I'm watching all these kind of smaller gems, A24, Neon type of films, and really try to bring it to light, the art of self-defense, things of that nature. So I have that going on my channel, watch alongs myself. I have one tomorrow. For my big horror fans out there, we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Friday the 13th. So I'll have some special guests for that. And then as soon as we get off this stream, I'm going to be finishing Dead to Me Season 2. So TV reviews, movie reviews, watch alongs, and interacting with you guys. This is one of the silver lining of this quarantine. I think there's many terrible things that are going on in this world, but one of the things that have been so awesome is just collaborating, meeting you guys, meeting other people on Instagram, YouTube, and all that different stuff. So I think after this quarantine happens, there's going to be just so many great relationships that are built. And if something like this, which I hope never happens again, we know that we have friends and people that support our content. We can jump on their stream, they can jump on ours. It's a fun time. So terrible time, but it's a fun time in regards to this community that we've built so far. So I thank you guys for having me on the channel. Like I said, we're building something here, and it's really awesome.
Yeah, man. Listen, for everyone who's still hanging out with us, Dom and I, we're a fan of every single one of you guys, and that's the reason why we wanted you all to come on. So we appreciate you being here and giving us your time. Now, Dom, is there a few messages we want to leave the people with here today?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, thank you guys all so much. Joe, Brandon, Elliot, David, you guys are freaking awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I cannot thank you guys enough for that. This was a lot of fun, and I couldn't have picked 4 better guys to do it with. And as for us, I'm Dom. That's Chris. I'm really tired, so I'm going to try and get this out as quickly as possible. I'm the movie nerd. He's the TV nerd. We have a podcast, and it's now officially, I think I could say, a YouTube channel. It's called Talkin TV. If you want to find us, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Just type in the Talkin TV podcast or just Talkin TV podcast into any one of those 3 features, and you'll find us. We are uploading pretty frequently. The thing you can always depend on is new episodes get uploaded on Wednesdays, and we're also uploading new content. I know myself, I'm just finally starting to upload some reviews that I have from some movies that I saw earlier on in the year. Elliot, I'm actually really happy that you pointed that out. Color Out of Space is one of them that I got upcoming. I also reviewed some Sundance hits like Horse Girl and some other movies that I saw in the beginning of the year that not a lot of people watch, like The Way Back and stuff like that. But we got a lot of content coming your way, guys. We got a couple more watch-alongs coming down the road. We got some interesting things, some top 10 lists, perhaps some more analytical pieces. We got some interesting stuff coming down the pipeline, and it could all be found on the Talkin TV YouTube channel. Please be sure to like and subscribe on that channel. The links can be found down below and also in those social media profiles that I just said. Chris, you have anything you want to leave the good people with tonight here?
Yeah, I mean, Dom nailed it. We appreciate you guys giving us your time. This is 100% a passion project, but we would love to see this thing grow. And, you guys all being here right now, it's almost midnight. We have 8 people watching and, supporting us, supporting our friends, our community. So don't just like and subscribe our videos. Please go like and subscribe and follow every single person on the stream right now if you already haven't. And, guys, I wanted to be an entertainer my whole life. And so thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it so much. This was a blast, even though the movie wasn't the best. And I'm glad we could have made the best of this situation. So as is show tradition, Dom, is there a message you want to leave the people with here today?
Oh, man, it would be a PG-13 movie for a PG-13 episode without me dropping my usual catchphrase with the one F-bomb that hopefully YouTube will allow us to drop. Watch more fucking movies, people. We out of here.
Oh, have a good one, guys.
Take it easy, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Later.